What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the Prophecy Misfits Podcast. This is episode 377. Power up, power down. And theme is obviously power, especially since what's going on in the Middle East. But yeah, a lot of things are powering up and a lot of things are powering down. It's kind of interesting to watch, but there's definitely a big divide happening between the two. So, interesting things to discuss. But if this is your first time here, or if you're here every week, but you fall asleep or not paying attention, this is what we do on Tuesdays and Saturdays. I don't know where I was going with that. This is what we do on Tuesdays and Saturdays. We get together and we watch and we pay attention and we inform ourselves of all the crazy things that are happening around the world right now. We know that we're living in the last days and things are going haywire as of right now, and they're escalating. They are definitely not de-escalating at this point. And so we get together and we watch these things and we pay attention. We try to view it from different angles. We try to view it from an unbiased lens, and we try to figure out just what on earth is actually going on right now. So we're better equipped, better prepared to go out there and do what we're called to do, which is to warn people of what is coming and to get the gospel out to as many people as we can. So, welcome in. If this is your this is your first time, and for all you regulars, you know how it all goes. Anyways, so power up, power down. Plenty of things to talk about. We are definitely not in a lack of information of crazy things happening. But we'll be talking a little bit more about what's going on with all the energy supply issues happening. A lot more problems with gas, various plants and distribution facilities shutting down. Australia is not looking good. I know Jellyfish is in the chat. What's going on, Jellyfish? It ain't looking good for your neck of the woods. So it looks like Australia is really at the forefront of all this, but there's plenty of other things going on. Russia, of course, is making out like a bandit in all of this. I know there's some stuff going around. People are saying, see, this was the World Economic Forum. They're doing this in order to bring about the climate, green climate things and everything like that. But the problem is the reactions that are being done is they're actually starting to flip the switches on coal plants. They're bringing coal plants back online and bringing nuclear plants and all these things on. So pretty interesting that they're not actually going with that green stuff as of right now, but we'll see what happens. We got plenty of the stuff to talk about with that. And that leads us to some other things. Where is it? There's just, where's it at? I'm looking for it. Plastics. That's what I was looking for. Plastics. A lot of issues with plastics. People don't realize, because when we think of LNG, we think of fuel and we think of gas and we think of cars and transportation and stuff like that. But we often forget that oil is involved with a whole host of things of plastics. It's involved with your shoes. It's involved with makeup. It's involved with cookware, appliances. We could go down a laundry list of all these things that you wouldn't think that oil has to do with. And so this is going to start affecting things like that. Actually, never mind. I'm not even going to say it. We'll just leave it there. Plastics is another issue that's going on. A lot of issues with plastics. We'll talk about that. Price is going up. Supply is diminishing. We also have a call regarding both from the IEA, International Energy Agency, as well as the New South Wales Premier, calling for COOF-style energy lockdowns. So we'll go over that. We also got an update what's going on with Lebanon and Israel and all that type of stuff. We also have more troops possibly getting ready to be deployed. Army raises its enlistment age. Looks like the United States is preparing to take down the Colombian president, just like they did Maduro. We also have the release of the Operation Total Extermination, which has to do with basically waging war on South America. So we'll talk about that as well. We also have some updates regarding the quote-unquote self-proclaimed most transparent administration in U.S. history, continuing to do everything that they can to hide everything that they're doing. We'll talk about various degrees of that. The U.S. Treasury just declared the United States insolvent. Yeah, that one missed the headlines. Cool. Trump deployed the ICE agents to replace TSA agents at airports. We also got some cyber attack stuff, some AI stuff, as well as some digital ID bills and whatnot. It's just take a pick. Plenty of things to talk about. But yeah. So, how's everybody doing? Everybody doing all right? Are we all having fun with all this? Lord, please come soon, right? All right, let's go ahead and get into some housekeeping, shall we?
Housekeeping?
I think you're sleeping.
Housekeeping?
All right, usual spiel. If you guys can, like, share, subscribe, get this out to as many people as you can. It's not about views, not about butts and seats, but it is about getting the warning out to people, getting people to Jesus. So if you guys can do me a solid and like, share, subscribe, I would certainly appreciate that. And yeah, our goal is to try and reach as many people as we can with the facts and the evidence and the truth of what is going on right now. It's absolute chaos everywhere you look. It's all about, I'm going to defend my side of things, or I'm going to attack that side of things, and everything has to do with sides, and everything has to do with defending certain positions, and so on and so forth. And our whole goal here, obviously, for those who have been around know, we just pull back the layers of everything. So if you guys can, like, share, subscribe, hopefully we can reach some of those people who are desperately trying to see what is actually going on through the fog of war. And then we can hit them with the gospel at the end of it, the most important part. So please like, share, subscribe. Also, if you're up for it, feel free to follow along on Rumble and Telegram. Those are my backup channels. If I get booted off YouTube, we'll be back up live streaming over on Rumble. And then Telegram, post updates, announcements, and other little things that I can't necessarily put in video format, I throw up on there. So feel free to follow along on those platforms if you have them. If you don't worry. Just make sure you guys bookmark the WretchedWatchmen.com website. That's your one-stop shop to stay up to date on everything happening with this channel and this podcast and all the things that we do. You'll find the latest podcasts and live streams there, the announcement page, the free book to download, and all that jazz. So feel free to go ahead and bookmark that so you're always up to date. And last but not least, if you guys like to support this channel and what I got going on, I got donation links down below. CashApp, Venmo, and GiveSendGo. This channel is not monetized. I don't make anything from ads, views, or anything like that. I run solely off of your guys' generous donations. So if you guys like to support this channel and what I got going on, those links are below. Thank you guys for your support. Again, you are the ones that allow me to do this. You are the ones that make it free. And for those who support via donation or prayer, understand that you are helping to get this information out to people, believers and unbelievers, as well as share the gospel. So thank you for that. And that's the most important part for sure. So I thank the Lord for all of you guys. All right. Tina says, I'm breaking up. If I'm breaking up, I don't know who I'm breaking up with. Single and mingle, anyway. But yeah, no, if it's my microphone, then I don't know. I don't see anybody else saying that. So maybe refresh Tina, if that's what's going on. Yeah. Okay, now it's your phone. Okay. Yeah. So if it does it, yeah, it might be something on your end. Cool. Anyways. All right. One other thing I want to put out there. Just the past 2 weeks, I have received a quite a large influx of emails and comments from people telling me to talk about this, report on this. Why aren't you talking about this? Why haven't you talked about that? Did you know you should look into this because it'll answer your questions and stuff? And most of which, probably about 95% of everything that everybody has said, I've already covered months to years ago. I don't know if these people are new, or I don't know if it's part of the group of people that go to all these channels, don't actually watch anything, and then just try to teach people through the comments. But yeah, so if you're one of those people that's asking me to go and cover something, go back and watch all my other stuff, because most likely I've already covered it. So yeah, if you leave comments like that or you email me, I'm probably not even going to respond. The stuff is already there. So if you're new, I got years worth of content to go for you to go check out. If you're one of those people that doesn't actually watch content and just goes to channels to try and educate people, find a hobby. So there we go. Just wanted to put that out there. Yeah, most likely I've already covered it. Go check it out. Okay. Cheryl, sounds like they want to tell you what to do. Take a walk through my email inbox. Yeah, it's fun stuff. Anyways, let's just go ahead and get going into all of this. And yeah, got plenty to cover. Not enough time to cover it all. All right, let's start off here. We're going to be, obviously, this is kind of a big issue. And so we covered it a lot on Tuesday. We kind of covered more of the today's Tuesday. We covered it on Saturday. We covered a lot of probably the biblical angle of things. Now I just want to give you guys the real world effect angle of what's going on right now. Jalapeno, that's okay. We'll boot him. No, you don't need to boot him. It's just, go watch the stuff. That's all. But yeah, let's talk about what's going on with the real world stuff. So world faces gas supply cliff edge as Gulf's final LNG shipments approach ports. So this is significant because we know that there's a serious issue with LNG, which is liquefied natural gas. So if you don't know what LNG is, liquefied natural gas, that's the stuff that gets used for petrol, for fuel, and then they can transfer it over into a whole bunch of other things. They use it for production, other products and things like that. It's a pretty, it's got a wide range. But yeah, LNG, liquefied natural gas. And we know that there's a serious problem. Obviously, stuff's not getting out. Whole bunch of production facilities and supply facilities were all hit. Oil fields were hit. All these things are shutting down. Force majeure on all these things, everything like that. There's somebody who was confused about what force majeure is. They said, is that an act of war? It's not an act of war. It means that the company is declaring that they will not be fulfilling the contract as far as getting product out for what people have paid for, and they declare force majeure, meaning there's a reason why they can't do it, and so they cannot be legally held liable for it. That's it in a nutshell. So force majeure is that. I just want to make sure I don't lose anybody on what that means. So we know that there's problems right now. We're already starting to feel the effects. All the effects that we're starting to see already, this is with shipments that were already en route to their locations still happening. All of those shipments that got out before the war started, they're about to stop in 10 days, which means in 10 days, everything is halted. And so we're going to see something much more significant than we're already seeing now. So get ready for a bigger jump to happen if that strait does not open. And it goes on, it says, countries around the world are facing a cliff's edge as the flow of liquefied natural gas from the Gulf comes to an abrupt end in the next 10 days, when a handful of final tankers from the region reach their destinations. So we're seeing the effects now while tankers are still delivering. Wait until all of those deliveries are done and everything has actually stopped. It says Qatar, which produced a fifth of the world's liquefied natural gas, had to stop exports, and many LNG carriers that loaded at Qatar and the United Arab Emirates were already on their way to destinations before the war started, according to analysis by independent ship broker Affinity, meaning that some customers are only about to now feel the pain of lost supply. Countries relying on import to power their economies will have to pay sky-high prices to compete for LNG supplies from the U.S. and elsewhere, switch to other fuels, or force households and businesses to use less. Yeah, significant curve there. Only one LNG cargo from the Gulf is still scheduled to arrive in Asia, so Asia's only got one en route from the Gulf, and they use a significant amount over there. 6 LNG shipments are still due to arrive in Europe. Pakistan is in a particularly vulnerable situation. Almost 99% of its LNG imports come from Qatar last year. Its last cargoes from Ras Laffan, which is currently shut down, Qatar's largest, arrived on the second and third days of the Iran war. So this is significant because that means while we're starting to already see the effects now and things are starting to ramp up, as soon as all those shipments are done from the Gulf, that means there's nothing going in, nothing going out. And that means we're about to see an escalation in issues, which leads us to a whole bunch of information like this. Slovenia limits fuel purchases as some pumps run dry. So Slovenia is getting hit now. Slovenia on Sunday temporarily limited fuel purchases to tackle shortages at the pump caused in part by cross-border fueling and stockpiling due to the Iran war. Fueling at individual service stations has been restricted to 50 liters per day for private vehicles and 200 liters per company and other priority users such as farmers. The restrictions will stay in force until further notice. Get ready, you're going to start to see a lot more countries having the same issues. We also have this coming out of Australia. Santos shuts down Barossa LNG amidst global gas crunch. Says Santos, which has seen its share price jump 19% in the month due to global oil and gas shortage, has quietly shut down its flagship Barossa LNG export project for several weeks. Perfect timing, right? Perfect timing. It's the same thing that just happened when all of a sudden all of the fertilizer stopped coming from the Gulf. And then due to a quote-unquote technical glitch out of nowhere, Australia's biggest fertilizer plant shuts down for 2 months. And now we have the same thing happening here where Santos just happens to shut down its LNG. The shutdown of the Darwin LNG plant, which processes gas from the Barossa offshore gas field, will deprive its customers of desperately needed supplies and prevent Santos from benefiting from sky-high prices for any uncontracted production capacity. On March 19th, Santos emailed stakeholders in the Darwin area about a planned shutdown of its 3.7 million tons per year Darwin LNG plant. It's stuff like this when we see things where companies are choosing to shut down their plants amidst all of the major issues happening around the world. It kind of gives you the perspective that this is all a planned event currently happening. And it appears, again, as I said off the hat here, was Australia was by far leading the charge in all of this. And these things continue to get worse, especially when we see more than 100 Victorian petrol stations confirmed to have run out of fuel as prices surge across the state. Stupid video. More than 100 Victorian petrol stations have run out of fuel as prices continue to surge. The Victorian government has confirmed that as of 8 a.m. Tuesday, 101 service stations across Victoria had run out of unleaded petrol, while 83 service stations have run out of diesel. Metropolitan areas had 52 of the service stations out of petrol and 41 out of diesel, compared to 49 regional service stations being out of petrol and 42 out of diesel. And again, we're going to start seeing more and more fuel rationing. You're going to start seeing prices go up. California just hit a record $7 a gallon for diesel or something like that. So they're skyrocketing over there in California, which California always has ridiculously high prices. But still, it just goes to show everything is raising. But yeah, you're going to start seeing it all over the place. We got Australia that's having issues. Singapore's has issues. There's another country we'll talk about in just a second that's having issues. Slovenia's having issues, and pumps are starting to run dry. Plus, we have this. This is also in the UK. Farmers face diesel rationing as prices soar. It says farmers across Britain are being hit with fuel rationing as supplies of diesel become squeezed. Some wholesalers of red diesel, which is used to power tractors and other farm machinery, have begun imposing limits on the amount farmers can buy. Patrick Crean, the procurement manager at Angela Farmers, which buys diesel in bulk for its members, said restrictions had been introduced in Essex and in parts of Scotland. He said, "We are seeing rationing firsthand." Mr. Crean said wholesalers were imposing limits to ensure that all farmers received at least some fuel. So again, this is an issue where now farmers are having to get rationed for their fuels in order to do their job. So we have fertilizer issues and we have diesel and petrol issues all hitting farmers at the same time. So this is rolling over into food much more drastically than we were probably anticipating with all of this. So now we've got an issue where farmers aren't going to be able to do their jobs. We understand the fertilizer issue here in the United States, but now we've got the UK regions over there, Britain, UK, Essex, Scotland, all those groups over there that are having issues getting the petrol supplies that they need. So you may have fertilizer, but if you don't have petrol, then you're not going to be able to do your jobs either. On top of that, let's head over to Ireland. Fishing fleet could be grounded within weeks due to fuel costs. That's another avenue that we may have not thought of when it comes to fishing and how they operate according to the fuel that they need. Ireland's offshore and inshore fleets could be grounded in 3 weeks if the government does not subsidize the fishing industry's fuel bill, it has been claimed. This could lead to a shortage of fish and a threat to the jobs of 3,650 people in the fish processing industry. Industry representatives have also warned that the viability of the entire Irish offshore fishing industry is now in doubt. It is also understood that around a third of the country's 180-strong offshore fishing fleet are on the verge of pulling in their nets and tying up their vessels because they can no longer afford to fish due to rising cost of fuel. The country's 800 inshore fishermen are also struggling with rising fuel prices and face similar challenges. So again, it's one of those things where you'll probably hear most people out there talking, where most of the emphasis is being put on not being able to drive or jet fuel, things like that. Because obviously that's kind of number one when it comes to hearing about fuel and LNG and these things like that. But the roll down, it's one of those things where when it comes to the energy side of things, it's not something that most people just think about as a catastrophic event for many different sectors until it actually happens. And that, again, that's not taking a shot at anybody. I don't think in that direction either. It's just, we just don't necessarily think of it that way. But energy is really at the top when it comes to everything else being produced off of it. And so we got gas problems, we got fuel problems, we got shipping problems, we got heating and power, cooking, we got fishing, we got farming and food, and it affects everything. And then, of course, who's making out on all of this? You have Russia. Novatek Inc.'s preliminary contract with buyer in Vietnam. Novatek has already signed a preliminary contract with the buyer in Vietnam and is ready to start liquefied natural gas delivery shortly, CEO of the Russian gas company, Leonid Mikkelsen, said. And so, with all of that going on, we have the situation here where who's making out with all the profits and the trade and all of this? Well, Russia is, because they're all of a sudden kicking on all of their production and launching it off to as many different people as possible, signing new contracts with people. So they're making a ton of money being able to provide what they can do. And we know Russia's a very, very, very large player when it comes to LNG. Now, again, I talked about with all of this, the whole thing of climate, the climate green initiative and stuff like that. There's a lot of people that are taking it from that angle, saying, see, this is the globalists. They're starting to push us towards the green initiative and want us to drive electric cars and do all this stuff like that. The only problem is that's cool if they want to get everybody switched over to electric cars, but what fuels the charging pumps for the electric cars? That's something that you got to think of, because we're not necessarily thinking about the energy side of things. We just think, well, we have an emphasis on electric cars, so they want us to go to electric. They want to get us off this stuff. Well, you have to have fuel to charge the cars. And so one of the things is, how do you do that? You use LNG to do it. You use coal to do it. You use all of these other things that aren't green to charge those things. So don't think, and again, I'm just throwing it out there. Don't think small like that, because that's another narrative that I'm seeing passed around a lot by people. Is, well, they just want us to get on EV and they want us to go to, well, that's all got to get powered somehow. How are they powering it? Exactly. And so this is out of Bangkok. Coal units restarted to curb electricity costs. Says the Energy Regulatory Commission, the RC, has ordered the restart of 2 decommissioned units at the Mae Mo coal-fired power plant in a bid to contain rising electricity bills. Coal, though controversial, remains significantly cheaper than liquefied natural gas, which accounts for about 60% of Thailand's power generation. And so, bada bing, bada boom. We're now ditching even further from the climate agenda by switching over to coal to get all this stuff running. So again, what I'm trying to do on this is I'm just trying to, because sometimes I kind of view a brain like a human brain sometimes, where there's all these different sections that holds all these different topics of information that you know. And usually kind of sitting there in the back with cobwebs on it is the energy section. And sometimes you got to kick off the cobwebs and turn the light back on in order to kind of start thinking in that direction. So don't think limited to, they're just trying to, push the climate agenda or get the EV and stuff like that. Don't think that way. Think from the top when it comes to the energy. And where does it roll down? All the things that it affects. And so this is just trying to churn that section of the brain again to get it going. If we go to the Philippines, the Philippines declares natural energy emergency. So they're already going into energy emergency mode over there. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos declared a state of national energy emergency on Tuesday, citing risks of domestic fuel supply and energy stability created by the Middle East war. The state of emergency was declared just hours after the country's energy secretary said that the Philippines planned to boost the output of its coal-fired plants, there's coal again, to keep electricity costs down as the war wreaks havoc with gas shipments. So again, we're kicking the coal stuff back online with a national energy emergency. How about Bangladesh? Bangladesh seeks $2 billion in loans by June to fund fuel imports. Now we're at the point where countries are trying to take loans from other institutions in other countries in order to keep their power on in their own country. That's not a good way to go about business unless you're attempting to reset the world through energy. Because energy also affects finance. And so through all of this reset, you can reset the financial system and kick it over to the digital if you so choose. Now, we don't necessarily see that happening right now, right here, right now. But this is something that takes a while to do. And if this is the kicker, if this is the one that flipped the first switch, then it's something that they have further down the row of dominoes, and it's coming. It says Bangladesh is seeking about $2 billion in loans from multilateral lenders by June as the new government looks to finance imports of liquefied natural gas and other fuels during the summer. Prime Minister Tariq Rahman's administration expects to receive $1.3 billion from the International Monetary Fund, a globalist entity, under an existing program, along with about $700 million from the Asian Development Bank. Sticking with Bangladesh, Bangladesh faces slow nuclear start as energy crisis deepens. So kicking over to nuclear energy. Bangladesh will likely commission its first nuclear reactor within months, a long delayed start that comes as the government grapples with acute energy shortages caused by war and trade disruption in the Persian Gulf. Fuel loading in the first of the two 1.2 gigawatt reactors at Rupur is planned for April 7th, he said. The reactor will be linked to the grid and start running at 30% capacity by June. Remember when the world was against nuclear? Even though it is the most powerful and cleanest option that we have right now that is publicly known. Notice how I throw that in there. Interesting. Let's keep it going. What else we got? Saudi Aramco cuts oil supply to Asia for second month in April. Saudi Aramco, the world's top oil exporter, has cut crude supply to Asian buyers for the second month in April. The producer is supplying only Arab-light crude exported from the Red Sea port of Yanbu to term customers in April, the sources said, keeping supplies to Asian refineries tight and capping the refined products output. Saudi Arabia has exported 4.355 million barrels per day of crude so far in March, but data from an analytics firm Kepler shows down from 7.108 million barrels per day in February. Significant drop. And keep in mind, Asia, specifically Japan, receives most of their LNG from the Persian Gulf, and they are in a serious problem right now. They just kicked on their reserves, by the way, their stockpile, which Japan does have one of the largest stockpiles in the world, but It's something where the moment you have to kick on the reserves, it's not a good sign in regards to that. How about this? This is where we start seeing an interesting trend begin. South Korea's Lee calls for energy-saving campaign, including shorter showers and car curbs. This is where we start to see the effects of energy restrictions. You can control the people with the energy. And so one of the best ways to do it is by taking away energy, check, and then having everybody conform to a new set of rules on a global scale, similar to what we saw with the Kuf situation in 2020. South Korean President Lee Jae-myung on Tuesday called for a nationwide energy-saving campaign over risks to oil and gas supplies from the Iran war, saying public institutions would cut back on their use of passenger cars. Energy Minister Kim Sung-wang told a cabinet meeting private sector vehicle curbs were voluntary for now, but could be reviewed if the energy alert level increased. The government is calling on people to adopt 12 energy-saving practices like shorter showers, charging phones and electric vehicles during the day, and using washing machines and vacuums over the weekend. The government will ask the top 50 oil-consuming businesses to cut... Whoa. Excuse me. Gnat flew right into my throat. Wow, that came out of nowhere. Back to this. The government will ask the top 50 oil-consuming businesses to cut use and encourage staggered commuting hours and other conservation steps, he said. Kim also said Seoul would restart 5 nuclear reactors by May, ease restrictions on coal plants, and expand renewable energy to reduce longer-term dependence on LNG. So again, we got nuclear coming back online. We got coal plants kicking back online. It said, and could extend the lives of 3 coal power plants scheduled to close this year. And so now they're moving those forward. Yeah, jalapeno, nat protein. That's right. Just pure protein going right into the throat. Yikes. But what we got going on with South Korea here is we're starting to see, again, I got something here, a couple more things I'll show you in a second, but you're going to start to see more and more calls from various locations around the world for restrictions on how people can travel, what people can do both publicly and privately. You're going to start seeing, reduction of not only anything electric, but you're going to start seeing reduction when it comes to things like water. Water usage is going to be another factor on this because there's some aspect of energy and water working together. And you're going to start seeing calls for similar things to like energy lockdowns and whatnot. So hang on to that. Now, to get to some of the things that aren't directly involved that we know of with the Iran situation in the Strait of Hormuz and all that, we have fire. We have a fire at one of Texas's largest refineries. Fire out and shelter-in-place order is lifted after oil refinery explosion near Texas coast. You're going to notice there's some random oil refineries in the United States that are all of a sudden combusting as well. It says an oil refinery fire near the Texas coast was put out on Tuesday, and a shelter-in-place order was lifted following air quality testing hours after a large explosion at the complex shot plumes of smoke into the air. No one was injured in Monday's explosion at the Valero refinery in Port Arthur. But we have another situation here that I'll expand on in a second. Residents at least several miles away said that they felt their homes shake. Some schools in the areas were closed Tuesday as a precaution. The refinery has about 770 employees and can process about 435,000 barrels of oil per day. According to Valero's website, the plant refines heavy sour crude oil into gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel, and that has just gone offline. We don't know for how long, but it's offline now. And like I said, there's been various other oil refineries around the country. Similar to, you guys remember, go back, this is 2026. Go back about 3 years ago, about 2023. All of a sudden, there's this string of like 100 and something food processing plants that all of a sudden started going up in flames, had random explosions. A couple of them had planes that flew into them. just a whole host of weirdness happening with food processing plants. We kind of got something going on when it comes to oil refineries the past couple of years as well, where they're just combusting out of nowhere. But here in Texas, it's interesting because we're getting a whole host of new contracts to start building refineries, foreign-backed and foreign-owned refineries here in Texas to start pumping oil, Trump and the drill baby drill situation. But we have a whole bunch of those contracts going online. But the problem is Texas is facing a massive water problem, which means those refineries won't be able to do anything because they don't have the water to cool their plants as they produce the oil. And I would know that because I'm sitting in ground zero in Corpus Christi. Now, I haven't talked about this. I've been following it for about a month now. But it's one of those things where the water reserves in Corpus Christi are going to be dry by May. And Corpus Christi, if they don't fix the problem, is going to be entirely out of water by November. And they're floating the idea of having to evacuate the city because there's no water here. And so they're in a serious state of emergency right now. Abbott has declared a state of emergency, even though Abbott and that whole government has been the one that's been making money off of all these deals, which has caused the water issue anyways. And so these oil refineries that are being set up in the United States won't even be able to run because Texas is not going to have any water. And so that's another aspect to all of this to think about. If there's no water to run the refineries, that means there's no way that the refineries can produce all the oil. So while we continue to get from the United States administration right now that they're out there collecting all this oil from all these places and they're blowing innocent lives up and disrupting the entire system in order to try and acquire all this oil, which we continue to hear floated from the church all the time saying, see, Trump is doing everything that he's supposed to do to make sure that the United States is America first and all that. Well, the problem is you're not taking care of the water situation, which means none of that means jack diddly squat. And so that's another avenue of all this to think about. Let's go over to Egypt. Egypt to dim lights early to conserve energy amid Iran war. Egypt will begin curbing some electricity use, including by ordering shops and cafes to close earlier, as the North African energy importer grapples with soaring global fuel costs caused by the Iran war. Starting March 28th, malls, eateries, retailers will all have to shut down by 9 p.m. for 5 days of the week. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli told reporters on Wednesday. At weekends, they'll need to close at 10 p.m., still early for many in the country of 110 million, where shopping and dining long into the night is common. Says other rationing will include turning off illuminated advertising, billboards, and reducing public lighting to a safe minimum. Many government buildings will also close by 6 p.m., while authorities are considering mandating work from home 1 or 2 days a week for both the public and private sectors. Work from home. Does that sound familiar? It's another 2020 tactic coming into play, but this time for energy. Interesting. How about this one? Ukraine hits major Russian oil port near Finland, shutting off more energy. Satellite images show flames and thick plumes of black smoke rising into the air from the oil terminal in the Russian town of Primorsk, which sits on the Gulf of Finland. A fuel tank was damaged at the port of Primorsk, causing a fire. Primorsk handles approximately 60 million tons of oil per year. And offline. It's amazing how all this stuff just keeps happening all at the same time, right? All of the targets, as of recently, is all energy. Everything is energy. The focus is energy. You look at the wars going on. What's the main targets that they're hitting? Both of them hitting energy. Plus, we just went over on Saturday that it's most likely that the United States and Israel, who have access to the exact same model of Iranian Shahed drones, may have struck Gulf states via false flag in order to push the energy situation forward. And again, we covered on Tuesday, one of the main elements that's progressing through all of this and through this whole situation is actually giving it more precedence is the two supply chains, one being connected to the Iraqi Silk Road, that brand new Silk Road, that would go from Al-Fa all the way up Iraq, past Babylon into Turkey and into Europe. And then there's also the Ben Gurion Canal situation, which is connected to that new Gaza that they want to build. And so those two plans are looking pretty good now because of this whole situation, which again, I tend to think that that's the side of it that's obviously you're not going to hear that in the secular side of things. But I think that's what's really getting pushed forward right now through all of this. Then we have this also from Russia. Russia curbs some nitrogen fertilizer exports. So more hits to the fertilizer situation. Russia has temporarily suspended exports of ammonium nitrate, further tightening the global supply of crop nutrients already strained by the Iran war. The Agriculture Ministry has paused exports from March 21st to March 21st to April 21st. The impact of the supply snarls is heightened because Northern Hemisphere farmers usually ramp up application of the nutrients during the spring planting period. The shortages could increase competition for the limited available fertilizer stocks, boosting farmers' costs and eventually flowing through the higher food costs. And we covered this on Saturday as well. We're getting told that roughly 25% of U.S. farms have not been able to acquire the fertilizer that they need for spring crops, and they're running out of time, which means that is a catastrophic amount of food that will not be placed. That will not be something that we necessarily see on the shelves anytime soon. But roughly 9 months from now, that's when you're going to see the depletion of it. So the food costs will be the first thing that you see. Then it'll be the food scarcity that starts to follow. Russia, the world's second largest fertilizer producer, amounts for about 20% of the global nutrient trade. The country produces 28.9 million tons of nitrogen fertilizer last year, but has already limited exports to prioritize domestic supply. Another one bites the dust with all of this. Now, before moving on to the next element of this, I always like to put this forward because, again, there's obviously a major issue happening right now. I'm not going to downplay that in any way. But at the same time, it's one of those situations that I want to make sure we stay level-headed, we stay grounded, and we keep, I guess the best way to put it is mental stability when it comes to this. Is this something that could continue to escalate and there's no going back from here? Absolutely. It's possible. Is that something that we know for sure is going to happen? We don't. And so similar, and I want to remind people, just like the whole 2020 situation, you guys remember the 2020 COOF situation? The first year was probably the most significant, but it was still something that you heard for a couple years following that thing into 2021 and 2022, that this is it. It's all over. This is the big one. Rapture at any moment. World's collapsing, getting ready for, the Antichrist to come on the scene, getting ready for the horsemen to start riding. All of a sudden you started hearing that everywhere because of what we were seeing at the here and now with no ability to see past into the future. Look at where we're at now. Did we make it out of that? Did we all of a sudden get out of that and quote unquote return to normal? Yeah, we know it's not normal, but you guys know what I mean. Did we come out of it and come back to quote unquote normal life following that? We did. You can't deny that. Even though in that moment, which was a long moment, at least for our timeline that we can comprehend in our minds, that moment was a very long time where we thought this was it, man. We're done. but yet we came out of it. Is there a possibility that this is the same situation where this was kicked on? It may go for a long time. It may hurt for a while, but is it a situation that we might come out of it and quote unquote return to normal again? It's possible. Now, we don't know if it's going to escalate and here we go, but we also don't know if this will be here for a little bit and then we get back to life as we know it. So it's just a reminder for people. I know a lot of people don't like to think in that direction because they like the doom. They want to stay in the doom and they think there's no possible way that, you can't think like that. This is it, this is it, this is it. And it's like, well, this is a chance. There's a chance that it could be it. There's a chance that it could not be it. So it's one of those things where I just want to put that forward to you guys and encourage you. Don't be the one that goes around to every opportunity that you have saying it's all over and be that person. Because I know a whole bunch of people that were like that during the 2020 situation that look kind of foolish now because they were dead set. You could not change their mind. It's like they had the ability to see the future and they were wrong. So don't be that person. Take it from the avenue of one day at a time, staying focused on a level-headed view of what is actually happening, viewing it through the biblical lens, and to use that opportunity not to scare people, not to freak people out, not to try and predict the future, but to do what we're told to do. Warn people. That doesn't mean make them crap their khakis or anything like that, but warn people appropriately and use that to be able to share the gospel and witness to people. So it's just one of those things I've just always wanted to, I always want to remind people when it comes to situations like this. Just because here in the here and now, we can't necessarily see what's going to happen in the future doesn't necessarily mean that this is it. There's been how many times in the past where there was so many events that kept happening where it was, this is it, this is it, this is it, and it wasn't it. It was progression to the next stage. And clearly there is a progression happening through this. A global progression where God's in control, but here on earth it's being orchestrated by the table. And they're progressing forward with whatever plan that they have, utilizing the stupid political puppets that we have currently sitting in all of their respective countries around the world right now. So just want to put that forward. Patricia, they are invading, Zach. Who's invading me? Who's invading me? I don't know what you're talking about, Patricia. I'm the only one in my house, so nobody's invading me. So, I don't know. It's one of those things where I said this the last time, and most people said, no, you have no idea what you're talking about. And then here we are sitting here, and they don't want to admit. But gnats, the gnats are invading me? Yes, the gnats are definitely invading me. I had my window open, and I think the screen has a hole in it, so I think I had some gnats coming through. Yes, I absolutely am getting invaded by the gnats. Please pray for my gnat problem. Anyways. All right. All right, let's take a look at this. So now we have another situation to watch when it comes to the demolishing of the EU. It's gnat season in South Texas. Ain't that the truth? The U.S. warns EU to pass trade deal or risk losing favorable access to LNG. So now we have a situation. Somebody's actually praying for the God to take away the gnats. Nat King Cole. So we have a situation here where now the United States is leveraging LNG supply to Europe based upon a trade agreement that the EU said they were canceling or putting on the back burner. They were pausing it because the United States was threatening Greenland. Here's an opportunity for a transfer of Greenland to the United States in order for energy. Now, that's quite a feat if that was to happen. But there's a possibility that this could be a factor in all of this. Don't lose track of the whole Greenland situation and connecting these land masses together. And so there's a chance that this might be the beginning of that transfer. It says the EU must implement its trade deal with the US without amendments or risk losing favorable access to liquefied natural gas shipments from American exporters. EU ratification of last year's agreement between the US President and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has been delayed by several issues, including Trump's threat to invade Greenland. And that was the one that made them pause the entire deal. They were getting ready to sign it, but then they paused it because Trump was threatening to go in and take Greenland. It says the European Parliament is set to vote on Thursday on the pact, which includes an agreement for the EU to buy $750 billion worth of U.S. energy by 2028, including LNG, oil, and civil nuclear technologies. And so there's no reference to Greenland being involved with that deal. However, there's a chance that might sneak its way in and make it privy to this, especially when we start working our way through summer and then winter starts coming in when Europe is going to get very, very cold, very, very fast. And that's possible that a deal could be made with the Greenland involving an oil trade. So something to think about when it comes to that. That's something that, again, won't happen tomorrow or a week from now, but it's definitely something to keep in the back of your mind. So if it does pop up in the news all of a sudden where United States is looking to take Greenland and trade energy to Europe for it, you're not going to be caught off guard and go, oh, did you see that? You're going to go, yeah, well, kind of saw that one coming. So it's possible. All right, we also have this. Let's move to plastic. Iran war ripples are driving up prices for plastics ingredients. U.S. producers of polyethylene, common plastic used in everything from packaging to containers, are buying more of a key ingredient, ethylene, in a sign that manufacturers are working to take advantage of export opportunities as global supplies tighten. As the manufacturers load up on the feedstock, prices for ethylene on the U.S. Gulf Coast have been climbing. Spot ethylene traded at 30 cents a pound, and it says that was up from about 27 cents on Monday, which had already marked a one-year high. The latest trade puts prices at a highest demand since February of 2025, underscoring strengthening demand. And so it has significantly shot up because of the situation currently happening, and with a whole bunch of plastic plants going down. We also have this is straight from Dow, not the trading market, but it's Dow Packaging and Plastic. They're the largest here in the United States. And we have this, they just sent this out to all of their customers. These are production plants that buy straight from Dow for their plastics. And this is dated March 24th. It says the Dow Chemical Company and Dow Chemical Canada will modify the previously announced US 15 cents per pound price and increase it to 30 cents per pound. This will take effect April 1st, 2026, which means they doubled the price per pound for plastic for all customers buying from Dow, which means that cost is going to get passed on to us. They use this plastic for everything from your Tupperware to styrofoam peanuts to, the little popper bubbles that you get, the bubble paper. That stuff gets used in all that. And that's something that companies aren't going to take, just like the tariffs. It was the customers that pay for it. It's us, the U.S. customers, that paid for all the tariffs. And we're the ones that are going to have to pay for the price increase when it comes to all these products as well. Now is when we start getting into the dystopian side of things, that if we start seeing this stuff come into play, it's not going to be fun. And so we start with New South Wales Premier, who calls for COVID-style protocols as fuel crisis explodes. So this is for you Australians. This is New South Wales Premier Chris Minns has called for COVID-style lockdowns to manage the escalating fuel crisis, raising the prospect of national rules for fuel rationing and work from home. Despite the Prime Minister's suggestion, such measures will be a matter for the states. New South Wales pushed back, warning that situation required a nationally coordinated response. By the way, we have gone from people siphoning gas out of the cars in Australia to drilling holes in gas tanks for gas in Australia. So again, Australia is usually a guinea pig country. They test a lot of stuff on Australia. You start to see things happen first in Australia before it starts making its way around the world. So keep an eye. It says we'll be prosecuted. I know there's a lot of people that can't lock up their cars, but man, figure something out. It says we'll be prosecuting with the Commonwealth government and the other states, and that is if demand management procedures are required. That might be rationing, that might be working from home, it might be other programs or remedies that we can introduce into the marketplace. It should be a nationally consistent approach, Mr. Min said. We need a nationally consistent approach if and when the time comes when we need to introduce those demand managements, a clear signal of what might be to come. The New South Wales Premier warned that he did not want to see a situation where states are having to make their own decisions and potentially come up with different answers about rationing, work from home, and other questions. So basically, this is not only an opportunity for them to introduce energy lockdowns if they so choose, but this is also an opportunity to take states' rights away and combine it even further into a global style situation, just like the COOF situation as well. Which leads us to this one. The IEA just so happened to have this wonderful 23-page paper ready to go for energy lockdowns that read identical to what the globalists have been talking about. And this paper is called Sheltering from Oil Shocks, Measures to Reduce Impacts on Households and Businesses. And there's a lot of IEA member countries: Australia, Austria, Belgium, Canada, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, Germany, Greece, Hungary, Ireland, Italy, Japan, Korea, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Mexico, Netherlands, New Zealand, Norway, Poland, Portugal, Slovak Republic, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, Turkey, UK, United States, and the European Commission. And then, yeah, there's a lot there. It says the conflict in the Middle East has created the largest supply disruption in history of the global oil market due to the near halt in shipping traffic through the Strait of Hormuz. Some 15 million barrels of crude oil and 5 million barrels of oil products typically traverse the strait each day, equivalent to around 20% of oil consumption. And so in this report by the IEA, it says it details 10 demand-side options open to households, businesses, and governments to shelter themselves from today's oil shock and relieve the strains on affordability. So if we do start to see energy lockdowns enter, there's a chance that they might be very similar to these 10 points delivered by the International Energy Association. One of them being work from home where possible. Working from home can significantly reduce oil consumption from commuting. And so they want to lock you in your house again to work remotely. There's countries out there that, again, have already reduced their work days to 4-day work weeks. There's some that have already instituted work from home policies because of the Iran situation. And there's some schools that are now starting to do 2 to 3 days of remote schooling now. Everything is reverting back to the digital space. Now, it's interesting. If this does get implemented and we start to see people start moving back to work from home, it would fit perfectly in line with them trying to introduce the internet ID, the digital ID situation, and it would bend perfectly. It would also institute another avenue for digital payments to start coming into effect. The second point is reduce speed limits on highways. Lowering the speed limits on highways can reduce an individual driver's oil consumption by 5 to 10%, overall oil use for private cars by 1 to 6%. And so work from home, reduce speed limits, Encourage public transportation. Shifting travel away from private cars to public transport, such as buses and trains, can reduce national oil use for cars by 1 to 3%. And so these are very consistent with what we've been hearing from globalist situations regarding, those 15-minute cities. Trump calls them freedom cities. They're the exact same thing, even though there's the people who still defend Trump to the death that say that he's against the globalists and say, no, his freedom city is not anything like the 15-minute city. Wake up. You're brain dead, because they're identical. But yeah, very similar to that, where it's all about working from home, public transportation. Don't own any cars or anything like that. Another point is alternate private car access to roads in large cities on different days. This includes limiting cars' access in designated zones to specific days based on their number plate. For those who lived in the 1970s when it came to the gas situation, you know what that was like. Odd number, even number. They're talking about allowing cars with certain plate numbers to drive on certain days. That's what they're talking about implementing. Another point is increase car sharing and adopt efficient driving practices. Carpooling increases car occupancy and relieves road congestion, reducing travel times and car usage. So carpooling. Another point is efficient driving for road commercial vehicles and delivery of goods. Then we have divert LPG use from transports. And then we have the air transportation situation. It says avoid air travel where alternative options exist. A reduction of around 40% of flights taken for business purposes is feasible in the short term, and with very high participation in work-related flight reduction campaigns. So avoid air travel. Question. What's something currently happening in the United States right now that is practically shutting down airports, and it's almost impossible for people to not spend 10 hours a day trying to get through TSA right now? That government shutdown that is still happening. There's still the partial government shutdown. A lot of people have forgotten about that, which is currently not paying TSA agents. And we'll get to that in a minute, because they're now deploying ICE agents to fulfill those positions, which is interesting. But it's very interesting, the timing of all this. The government shutdown, which specifically shut down TSA payments. So TSA agents aren't showing up to work because they're not getting paid, which is causing massive lines where people are waiting 5, 6, 7, 8 hours to try and get through their gate for their flight. And at the same time, we now have a fuel problem, global fuel problem. And then the IEA comes out and says, avoid air travel. Sounds pretty coincidental, right? I don't believe in coincidence. Pretty fascinating. Another point is, where possible, switch to other modern cooking solutions. And then they have leverage flexibility with petrochemical feedstocks and implement short-term efficiency and maintenance measures. Now, there's a couple of these I want to point out because they expand on a couple of them. And they have work from home where possible. It says, in response to the 2026 crisis in the Middle East, several countries have announced measures to encourage working from home. For example, the Philippines and Pakistan have mandated 4-day work weeks for government workers, while Sri Lanka has closed public offices on Wednesday, and Laos, PDR, Thailand, and Vietnam are all actively promoting remote work. Many European governments also encouraged working from home in response to the energy crisis in 2022 and 23, including through the joint IEA-EU Playing My Part campaign. We keep going down on this. It says alternate private car access to roads in large cities on different days. It says private vehicles are allowed into designated zones in large cities on specific days only based on their number plate. Again, 1970s gas rationing. Vehicles with odd numbered plates have access on different weekdays than those with even numbered plates. They're actually discussing bringing this back, but on roadways, not just gas stations. It says, in response to the 2026 crisis, how does that work? If somebody needs to get to the hospital on a day, but their license plate doesn't match up, or how does that work? Interesting. It says, in response to the 2026 crisis in the Middle East, the Korean government is considering putting in place a 5-day or 10-day vehicle rotation system, meaning each vehicle would be prohibited from use for 1 day every 5 or 10 days. So they're telling you, you cannot drive your own personal property on a public access road. They're trying to restrict it. Looking further back, the measure has been used for a long time in many cities globally. During the first oil shock in 1973, the Italian government first introduced car-free Sundays and then an odd, even number plate policy on Sundays. Since then, some large cities such as Beijing and Sao Paulo implemented this measure permanently, while temporary schemes during pollution or rush hour peaks were implemented in New Delhi, Jakarta, and Manila. Very interesting. So yeah, this is a 23-page paper you can find on the IEA website. You guys can check it out further if you want to. But yeah, very interesting that they were so quick to come forward with a way to restrict people's access to your right to travel. Pretty interesting on all of that. So, all right. Patricia, the invaders are the invasion of the body snatchers disguised as gnats. Yeah. It's true. Oh, man. All right. So, when it comes to the energy situation, obviously, it's something as of right now, we can expect it to get worse. We have the issue of all those shipments from the Gulf are about to do their final drop-offs in about 10 days. We have countries that are starting to run out of fuel entirely. Some countries are starting to ration fuel, which is affecting farmers and fishermen, which affects, obviously, in turn, food production and whatnot, which is something that, again, we might not see for a little while because it's a cycle system. So it's not going to be this cycle that will be affected. Prices will be affected, but scarcity would be something that we'd see later down the line. And it's interesting because Trump, again, for like the 10th time today, declared that they won the war. It's over. It's victory. They won. But yet we're seeing that they're actually sending more troops over there. Everything's escalating. Missiles are still flying. Hormuz is still shut down. So again, he's lying through his teeth. Again, I don't know how any sound-minded Christian can sit there and still defend that man. It blows my mind. Because all he is he lies about literally everything. But obviously what we're witnessing right now, and I still stand by it, after we talked about it on Saturday in depth, is this is clearly a global energy reset of some type. Again, we don't necessarily know what the outcome is going to be. We don't know what the plan is. I still think one of the major emphasis has to do with preparing the Middle East for when we shift Old Testament again in the day of the Lord, which is currently still going forward right now. But that doesn't mean that we necessarily know the outcomes of how it's going to affect us in the here and now or a year from now. So we just need to make sure that we're keeping an eye on everything so we're not caught off guard. We just need to trust in the Lord and continue to do what he has commanded us to do in these times. Don't be the doom person who's throwing doom around at everybody about something that you don't necessarily have the answer for. Be careful. Because again, there are still people walking around saying that the Kuf shot was the mark of the beast. How incredibly foolish do they look right now? And they're still standing by it. So don't be that person when it comes to this. Don't be that person. All right. Let's move on from the energy situation and let's take a look at what's going on with the Lebanon situation. So one of the things, again, we kind of talked about this on Saturday, is while the world is paying attention to Iran, and the United States is basically the one that's dealing with Iran with all of this. Israel is taking this opportunity to deal with Lebanon. And I think that's one of the aspects to all of this that's worth paying attention to, because if Israel wanted to deal with the Hezbollah Lebanon situation, if they just went ahead and did what they're doing now without starting the Iran war, there's no way that they would be able to accomplish it, because Iran would have gotten involved again because of everything. And so in order for Israel to do what they're doing in Iran or in Lebanon and deal with that situation, they had to begin a war with somebody bigger and draw the United States in to get involved. So they're basically, the United States is playing defense against Iran while Israel is taking care of what they wanted to do in the first place. Does that make sense? So the only way Israel can accomplish what they're doing in Lebanon right now is by having a distraction war with Iran, and the United States taking care of that, which is freeing up Israel to do what they're doing over there. And so, again, that's an angle on this I don't necessarily think people are thinking about or understanding, because the fireworks happening with Iran and the United States, and so Israel's able to sneak off and do what they're doing in Lebanon. And yeah, pretty interesting. So we have this Israeli minister. This was March 23rd. Israeli minister calls for annexation of southern Lebanon. And so when we look at this, one of the things that we need to make sure that we're paying attention to is Israel has had a plan for a very long time for the quote-unquote Greater Israel Project. We talked about this a little bit on Saturday, but the Greater Israel Project has to do with expanding the borders of Israel. Now, we know Israel biblically is bigger than it currently is right now. We understand that. And so the land that they are technically going after right now is theirs, given to them by God. But at the same time, what they're doing by taking it by force, how they're doing it, is causing major rifts in the world, which is then in turn causing the world to turn against Israel. And we know that that's one of the factors that we will be witnessing, according to scripture, in these last days. So it's kind of interesting how this works. So by Israel going and taking what is technically their land given to them by God, but doing it the way that they're doing, which is an evil way of doing it, because there's a lot of innocent lives that are getting annihilated because of it, is in turn causing another repercussion that the scripture said is going to happen during this time, which is the world is turning against them. It's I don't know, when you look at something like that, it's very fascinating how everything is all kind of wrapped together, biblically and secularly. Everything is just kind of wrapped together in all of this. And it just goes to show that not only is scripture correct, again, which that shouldn't surprise us, but it's one of those things where we can see other descriptors of both the world and Israel coming alive all at the same time. And so it's pretty fascinating to watch. I don't know. It's something that I think is extremely fascinating. If you're not able to split the difference between biblical Zionism and political Zionism, it's something that you won't ever actually be able to see, because you're one of those people that either thinks Israel is evil and needs to get wiped off the face of the earth, and they play no role in anything, or you think that Israel is an idol and something that can do no wrong, and no matter what, we support everything that they do, even if that includes hiding evidence of the things that they're doing. And so it's pretty fascinating when you watch all this stuff happen from a grounded, biblical, clear view of things. Anyways, That's my position on it. Anyways, Israeli minister calls for annexation of southern Lebanon. Says Israel should extend its border with Lebanon up to the Litany River, deep inside the country's south. Israel's finance minister said on Monday as Israeli troops bombed bridges and destroyed homes in an escalating military assault. The comments by Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich were the most explicit yet by a senior Israeli official on seizing Lebanese territory in a fight Israel says targets Iran-backed Hezbollah militants. Says Smotrich told an Israeli radio program that the military campaign in Lebanon needs to end with a different reality entirely, both with the Hezbollah's decision but also with the change of Israel's border. Says, I say here definitively in every room and in every discussion too, the new Israeli border must be the litany, Smotrich said. Smotrich, leader of a small right party in Netanyahu's cabinet, has made similar comments about Gaza, which has often gone beyond official Israeli policy. And as we know, Israeli government has basically said that they want to do, or they were threatening the people in Lebanon, saying that we're going to do what we did in Gaza to your area. It also says over the weekend, Israel struck a main bridge linking South Lebanon with the rest of the country after ordering its military to destroy all crossings over the Litany River and to step up the demolition of homes near the southern border. It says Hannah Emil, the mayor of Christian border town Rimish, whose residents have refused to leave their homes, told Reuters that it was getting increasingly difficult to move around. Once or twice a week, a convoy from the Lebanese military accompanies us as we try to get basic goods from nearby areas. Already, we have no state electricity, no water, and we have diesel shortages. If all the routes to the north get cut off, who knows what the future could hold for us, Emil said. So again, it's a situation where whole bunch of innocent lives. We know there's been 1,000 deaths. Over 100 children have been killed because of this. People have had their homes bombed out, and they said that they won't. Israel said that they won't be able to return to those homes, and we have all this happening. So interesting to watch. Then we also have at least 1,000 U.S. troops from 82nd Airborne set to deploy to the Middle East. The U.S. military is preparing to deploy at least 1,000 troops from the 82nd Airborne Division to the Middle East in the coming days. Now, there's varying reports out there. Some are saying 1,000, some are saying 3,000. We don't necessarily know the case. We know that the order has not been given for them to actually deploy. They are just on ready to deploy orders. So there's a chance in the next coming couple days that the 82nd Airborne might indeed be deployed to the Middle East. That doesn't necessarily mean in Iran. It just means to the area over there, probably like Djibouti or something like that. And then from there, if they so choose to give the order to go in, then they're already in the region and can drop in. It says the U.S. military is preparing to deploy at least 1,000 troops from the 82nd Airborne Division to the Middle East in the coming days, according to 3 people of knowledge. The unit is considered the Army's emergency response force and can typically be deployed on short notice, roughly 18 hours. The force would include a battalion of the 1st Brigade Combat Team, as well as Major General Brandon Tegmeyer, the division's commander and division staff. A couple of the leaders from the 82nd Airborne have already made their way to the Middle East, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the troops are going there. But having their leaders already there is an indicator that they're preparing to make plans for the troops to follow. So we'll see what happens. It says while the Marine units are trained in missions that include supporting U.S. embassies, evacuating civilians, and disaster relief, the soldiers of the 82nd Airborne based at Fort Bragg in North Carolina are trained to parachute into hostile and contested territory to secure key territory and airfields. Of course, the main talking point that we're hearing from most places is they would either drop in to take Karg Island or drop in to try and take the launchers in the mountains that are blocking off the Strait of Hormuz. Both would be a death sentence. So if they do in fact do that, be prepared for a lot of loss of life for United States Americans. Then, just coming out today, this is a very interesting indicator worth paying attention to. It says Army raises enlistment age to 42. and removes waivers for marijuana possession. New recruiting rules bump the age limit for recruits from 35 to 42, easing restrictions on a single marijuana possession conviction accounts for changes in society. The fact that not only did they sign something in the NDAA, which will bring back automatic draft registration starting in December, but then on top of it, they are raising the recruitment age from 35 to 42 is a pretty good indicator that something is coming in the future where they're going to need a lot of soldiers. This is a major update to Army recruiting regulations this week, raises the maximum age a recruit can join to 42 and removes a barrier to joining the recruits with a single legal conviction for marijuana or drug paraphernalia possession. The Army's previous limit was 35, though exemptions are occasionally made. The higher age limit brings the Army in line with other service limits of 41 in the Navy and 42 in the Air Force and Space Force. Army recruiting officials have noted in recent years that the average age of recruits is increasing, with officials telling reporters in 2024 that the average recruit was 22 years, 4 months, and that it is still going up. This is pretty interesting because you look at the timing of it, you look at what it's connected to. It's a pretty good indicator that they're prepping for something in the future. Now, let's take a look at this. Because as we know, well, we don't necessarily know, but we've seen a lot of possible indicators that false flags have been going off in the Gulf states. We also know that the United States does not care about who it's targeting and who it kills. Specifically, you take a look at the over 150 school children that were killed by a U.S. airstrike at the beginning of the war. Well, we have this. Patriot missile involved in Bahrain blast, likely U.S. operated. Yeah. So it says an American-operated Patriot missile defense battery likely fired the interceptor missile involved in a pre-dawn explosion that injured dozens of civilians and tore through homes in U.S. ally Bahrain 10 days into the war on Iran, according to analysis by academic researchers. So basically, there's been a cover-up because there was an explosion in Bahrain that injured a whole bunch of civilians there. And the United States and in Bahrain came out and said it was Iran that did it. But analysis is indicating that it was actually a failed United States Patriot interceptor that did it. Interesting. Both Bahrain and Washington have blamed an Iranian drone attack for the March 9th blast, which the Gulf Kingdom said injured 32 people, including children, some seriously. Commenting on the day of the attack, U.S. Central Command said that an Iranian drone struck a residential neighborhood in Bahrain. In response to questions from Reuters, Bahrain on Saturday acknowledged for the first time that a Patriot missile was involved in the explosion over Mahaza neighborhood in Sitra Island, offshore from the capital, Manama, and also home to an oil refinery. The damage and injuries sustained were not a result of a direct impact to the ground of either the Patriot interceptor or the Iranian drone, the Bahrain spokesperson said. Neither Bahrain or Washington have provided evidence that an Iranian drone was involved in the incident. The incident points to the risks and limitations of the strategy. The blast from the powerful Patriot, whether or not it intercepted a drone, contributed to widespread damage and casualties, while Bahrain's air defenses were unable to prevent strikes that night on a nearby oil refinery, which declared force majeure hours later. And this is something that I've talked about from the very beginning of this thing, and I've made a point about it because there's so many people that just continue to just regurgitate whatever the United States spokespeople have been saying in regards to what's happening in the Middle East or Israeli stuff as well. They absolutely refuse to look into any information themselves and take a look at anything that might make the United States or Israel look bad in any type of way. And the fact is there's so much going on with this whole war that doesn't fit if it was a real situation. I mean, not real in the way of, actual people getting hurt and armament getting launched everywhere and stuff like that. But what I mean is, if there's not some secondary or third-dairy or fourth-dairy, I know that's not how you say it, but you guys know what I'm saying, element to all of this, that false flags and faulty information would not be helping them move those things forward. And so, it's one of those things where I still see some of these pastors parroting whatever Israel says. It says, oh, we've destroyed 90% of Iranians' missile facilities. And then literally 2 days later, I don't know if you guys saw this, just a couple days ago, Iran launched the largest barrage into Israel so far, where they launched over 5 20 missile barrages into Tel Aviv and just did extensive damage over there. That was also the same time that they hit Dimona, which has the nuclear facility there. If that's true, that they eliminated 80% of Iran's missile capabilities over there, but yet they're launching the largest barrages so far, who's lying? But the thing is again, you're not going to get the truth of the matter from those who have a biased stake in it. For those who know me and have been around what I do, you guys know that I don't care whose name comes up. I don't care what country is involved. I don't care what it is. As long as I can see what is happening and tie things together, I'm just going to tell it to you like it is. And so when it comes to this idea that we have to continue to push these narratives forward, you are doing a serious disservice to yourself. You are damaging any ability to rightly divide the situation at hand, and you're making yourself look like a fool to non-believers who can see through the propaganda system. And there's a lot of them out there. Again, we need to make sure that we understand the fact that government as a whole, globally, is corrupt, self-serving, evil, and led by satanic principalities. That is biblical. God warned with the very first government. God warned, you don't want this. What did the people do? They went for it. They begged. They said, give it to us. And all throughout Scripture and all throughout history that is connected to Scripture, you guys can go and look this stuff up, is corrupt, evil governments killing their own citizens and other citizens in other countries to fulfill evil things against other corrupt, evil governments. And so this idea that gets pushed around where the only ones that are so precise and good-hearted that they wouldn't dare ever kill innocent lives to move things forward for an evil agenda, whether it's self-seeking or for a satanic purpose, are the United States and Israel, is self-deluded. Anybody who believes that is self-deluded. And there is mountains of evidence going back to biblical times. Well, only, 250 years for America, but biblical times for Israel, that says that these two countries participate in the exact same way all those other evil countries do. So again, if you're one of those people that is still holding on to that notion that we're some knight in shining armor and we're here to take care of people, that we actually go into other countries because we care about those people, the little shrubs, the peasants over there, we're here to save you. Well, I got a load of dinosaur excrement taller than what's his face in Jurassic Park. Jeff Goldblum. Don't be that person. Seek the facts of what's going on. Seek the evidence of what's happening right now. It's a lot easier. It gets a lot easier over time if you're willing to just accept it. Not only for your own sake, but it also is easier to witness to people. It's easier to warn people. And it's easier to, well, not make yourself look like a fool. Anyways. Yes, Edward, I am always bragging about that dinosaur excrement. It's interesting. I always make reference to that all the time. I don't know why. It just, because it's a big pile of, that's all I can say. Anyways. Cindy J, is the show still going? Yep. Need to restart your page there if it's on replay. Okay. So let's take a look at what's going on with... I have no idea why Bill Cosby is up. Anyways, I'm not even going to click on that. Let's move what's going on in South America. So the DEA names Colombian president priority target as U.S. prosecutors probe ties to drug traffickers. For those who know what happened with Venezuela and Maduro, you would know that this is the first step before they go in and take the dude out. So it appears that they are, quote unquote, legally preparing to go in and take out the president of Colombia as well. So they took out Maduro at Venezuela. They're ready to go when it comes to Cuba, and looks like they're prepping to do the same thing in Colombia now. And so when you look at this, we have another escalation getting ready to happen in South America. It says Colombian President Gustavo Petro has been designated a priority target by the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration as federal prosecutors in New York probe his alleged ties to drug traffickers. DEA shows Petro has surfaced in multiple investigations dating back to 2022, many based on interviews with confidential informants. The alleged crimes the DEA is investigating includes possible dealings with Mexico's Sinaloa cartel and a scheme to leverage his Total Peace Plan to benefit prominent traffickers who contributed to the presidential campaign. The record also suggests the use of law enforcement to smuggle cocaine and fentanyl through Colombian ports. I don't know why that's a big deal, since Trump just let free that dude who helped smuggle in 400 tons of cocaine into the United States. So I don't know why he cares about that. It says the priority target label is reserved for suspects DEA deems to have a significant impact on the drug trade. It's unclear when the DEA gave Petro that designation. So they are getting ready. They're preparing to do the exact same thing that they did in Venezuela to Maduro, because this was the very first step that they did with Maduro. So, if all of a sudden you see United States goes into Colombia to take out Petro, don't be caught off guard, because they're preparing for it. They're getting ready for it with their big moves in the South America region, which all has to do with Operation Total Extermination. Pentagon reveals attacks in Latin America are just the beginning. With Operation Total Extermination and Trump's threats against Cuba, expect more U.S. military strikes in the region. It says, as the Trump administration continues to bombard Iran, a top Pentagon official revealed that U.S. wars in the Western Hemisphere are also expanding, unveiling an effort dubbed Operation Total Extermination. And so this is a actual report. It's an 11-page transcript from Joseph M. Humeyer, which is the Assistant Secretary of Defense, where he admitted that Operation Total Extermination is there to go in all of these countries in South America and kill a whole bunch of people. Says attacks on Latin American drug cartels are just the beginning. Joseph Humeyer, the acting assistant secretary of defense for Homeland Defense and America's Security Affairs, told members of the House Armed Service Committee last week. Humeyer indicated that many more strikes in Latin America are on the horizon. The comments came a day after Trump again teased American annexation of Cuba. I want you guys to listen to this, because this just is a revealing of a man who, again, I think from the angle, if we were to actually sit here and see who these people actually are, this is somebody who I think is saying things and doing things that are off script that may in fact get him eliminated. He says, I do believe I'll be the honor of having the honor of taking Cuba, Trump said last week. Whether I free it, take it, I think I can do anything I want with it. This is President of the United States saying that it'll be an honor for him to do whatever he wants with a country he doesn't own. I'll just go in there. I can take it. I can free it if I want to. I can do whatever I want to with this other country with all these people on there. I'll just do whatever I want with it. It's like a kid playing with its food. It's like a bully pushing a kid around in school. And it's one of those things where, again, I think he's going off script on a lot of things, and I don't know how much they're going to put up with it. I don't know. We're referring to the table. I don't know how much they're going to put up with it. I don't know. It's just one of those things where as we continue to move forward, the more and more that I hear Trump become so unbelievably unhinged on what he's saying out there, makes me wonder if we're getting closer to the day where he's going to get taken out, because he's going to start causing problems with their plans and they're going to need to replace him, which is something that, again, I think you should keep in the back of your mind with all of this. It says Humeyer announced that the Department of Defense supported bilateral kinetic actions against cartel targets along the Colombia-Ecuador border. Pentagon speak for the March 3rd strikes on unnamed designated terrorist organizations. The joint effort named Operation Total Extermination is the start of a military offensive by Ecuador against transnational criminal organizations with the support of the U.S. It says the U.S. Ecuadorian campaign has already strayed into Colombia after a farm was bombed or hit by a ricochet effect on March 3rd, leaving an unexploded 500-pound bomb lying in Colombia's border region. So this is one of those things where my mind just went blank on it. During the Iran situation with everything happening, well, so yeah, when all this stuff started happening, there was it wasn't really an announcement. Again, I don't know what you would call it, but there was a leakage that came out that the United States teamed up with Ecuador in order to do an attack on a cartel in their region in the middle of the night. Do you guys remember that whole situation? And said that they were taking out some drug lords over there. Well, what actually happened is the U.S. said it helped bomb a drug camp, but they actually bombed a dairy farmer or a dairy farm, and accounts by citizens of that region said that the Ecuadorian military came in and tortured innocent people. There's no drug camp there. They went and tortured innocent farmers in the region. It says, as we'll get back to this article in a second, but I want to make sure that we know what happened on March 3rd. It says, as Trump prepared to welcome conservative Latin American leaders to a summit in Florida in early March, United States officials released a video of a massive explosion capturing the destruction of what they said was a drug trafficker's training camp in rural Ecuador. The video was meant to show that the U.S. military, which for months has bombed boats it says are carrying drugs from South America, was now bombing narco-terrorists on land, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth wrote on social media. The military strike appears to have destroyed a cattle and dairy farm, not a drug trafficking compound, according to interviews with the farm owners, its workers, human rights lawyers, and residents and leaders in San Martin, the remote farming village in northern Ecuador where the strike took place. So again, we have another situation where we know the largest drug trafficker in the world is the CIA. And then the military goes and causes these problems all over to innocent life in order to move things forward. And so the United States helped Ecuador torture innocent lives and destroy a dairy farm and called it taking out narco-terrorists. Similar to all the lives that were bombed, the boats bombed off the coast of Venezuela, none of which to this day have been proved to be carrying drugs, even though we were told by the United States leadership that they were in order to give them the opportunity to go into Venezuela. So the United States was killing countless innocent lives to move forward with an authoritarian, illegal maneuver. And they just did the same thing in Ecuador. And it says, and through the Pentagon said at the time that it has executed targeted action against the site at Ecuador's request. U.S. troops had no direct involvement in the strike shown in the video, according to 4 people with knowledge on the operation. In San Martin, which the Times visited over 2 days this month, residents told a different story about the bombardment and the actions by Ecuador's military in the days leading up to the strike. In case you guys don't know, the president of Ecuador, Nicoba, or whatever his name is, he's a CIA asset. So that should be no surprise there. It says workers on the farm told the Times that Ecuadorian soldiers arrived by helicopter on March 3rd, doused several shelters and sheds with gasoline, and ignited them after interrogating workers and beating 4 of them with the butts of their guns. 3 of the workers, who requested to be anonymous for fear of retaliation by the government, said that the soldiers later choked and subjected them to electrical shocks before letting them go. Village residents said Ecuadorian helicopters returned to the farm 3 days later on March 6th and appeared to drop explosives on the farm's smoldering remains. It was at this point, they said, that Ecuadorian soldiers recorded the footage that U.S. and Ecuadorian officials said captured the bombing of a trafficker's compound. But it was just a dairy farm. The Ecuadorian military said in a news release that the property was used by an armed group to hide weapons and as a place for drug traffickers to sleep and train. The farm's owner and local residents denied the claims. Residents said that the strike was part of a broader multi-day operation by Ecuadorian soldiers who burned 2 nearby abandoned homes earlier in the week, when then bombed one of them by plane. Goes on to say the Ecuadorian government said in the news release that it had relied on U.S. intelligence and support to target the farm, which it said was a camp used to train about 50 drug traffickers. However, Ecuadorian officials said soldiers had recovered guns and other evidence of illicit activity on the property. The Ecuadorian military did not offer any evidence for its claims, even though it has a track record to publicize photos of drugs, weapons, and contrabands it seizes during the operation. It's the exact same thing that so many people fall for when it comes to, the strikes. Remember the Christmas strikes by the U.S. military in Nigeria to help save the Christians or whatever? We kind of talked about that back then, but all the reports are saying that they either struck open fields or blew up villages with innocent lives that had nothing to do with Islamic terrorists. And it was the United States that just dropped bombs in locations in Nigeria, and it had nothing to do with saving Christians. Guess what? All those Islamic fighters in Nigeria are still there, slaughtering Christians. Because guess what? The United States dropped bombs, left, and didn't do anything. Even though the churches celebrated Trump as this amazing God person for saving the Christians, and he didn't do anything except kill innocent lives, blow up fields, and leave. Don't fall for this idea that the United States military is on a crusade to save lives and to fix problems. They're not. They're not. Let's get back to this one. Humeyer referred to the attacks as joint land strikes and said that America was providing Ecuador with capabilities that they otherwise would not have. The U.S. has since conducted at least one more strike with Ecuador. The attacks in Ecuador are also part of expansion of Operation Southern Spear, the U.S. military's illegal campaign of strikes on boats in the Caribbean Sea and Eastern Pacific Ocean. The U.S. has conducted 46 attacks since September 2025, destroying 48 vessels and killing almost 160 civilians. The latest strike on March 19th in the Pacific killed 2 more people and left 1 survivor. The Trump administration claimed its victims are members The Trump administration claims its victims are members of at least one of 24 or more cartels and criminal gangs with whom it claims to be at war with, but refuses to name. Because if they name them, people would realize that it goes back to CIA training, Army training, U.S. Marine training. Again, we went over that, the whole cartel situation in Mexico. All those cartels doing battle right now, causing all the problems, are all trained, funded, and armed by the United States. So the more that they name those things, the more that they get caught being the ones that created them. General Francis Donovan, the Southcom commander, told lawmakers last week that the boat strikes are not the answer, but teased an even larger campaign. What we're moving for right now might be an expansion of Southern Spear, but really a counter-cartel campaign process that puts total systematic friction across the network, he told members of the Senate Armed Service Committee. I believe that these kinetic boat strikes are just one small part of that. Humeyer could not say how many land strikes were being conducted across almost 20 Latin American and Caribbean nations. I'll say that again. Humeyer, Secretary of Defense, or the Deputy Secretary of Defense, could not say how many land strikes were being conducted across almost 20 Latin American and Caribbean countries. This is the dude that's supposed to know. And he cannot confirm how many strikes the United States is hitting in 20 other countries. Did you guys know that the United States right now is currently launching bombs into 20 Latin American countries? Did you guys know that? Humeyer knows that we're doing it, but he can't tell you how many are actually being done. He says, "I don't have an exact number," he replied to a question. But when asked by Representative Adam Smith, the ranking member of the House Armed Service Committee, if the War Department would be willing to be moving to a lot more terrestrial strikes, Humeyer replied, yes. So he doesn't know how many strikes are happening in 20 other Latin countries. But when asked, do you guys plan on expanding those? He says, yes. But yet, when you look at school history books, when you look at Hollywood movies, when you listen to your patriotic pastors on Sunday, you are being told that the United States are the good guys. They're the ones that are doing all these good things, that they care about innocent lives. They care about these people. They're not out there doing all this stuff. But yet, when the truth finally comes home, when the nail finally gets struck through the board, when we look at what's going on, we realize that the United States is one of the biggest terror organizations in the world. Line them up with all the other countries doing all they're doing. This is the reality of the situation. This is what happens when we live in a fallen world in these last days, where the only hope that we have is Jesus Christ, and we know that the only fix for this world is the promise that God is going to burn this thing down to the ground in the end. And you need to choose, are you going to be with Christ, or are you going to continue to fall in line with the lies, which eventually leads to Mr. Antichrist, which eventually leads to Satan, which eventually leads to eternity in hell separated from God? Which one you picking? You're running out of time to pick. This is in January. The United States attacked Venezuela and abducted the country's president, Nicolas Maduro. It now rules the country through a puppet regime. Federal prosecutors have reportedly drafted a criminal indictment against Venezuelan interim president Delcy Rodriguez, threatening her with corruption and money laundering charges if she does not continue to do the bidding of the Trump administration. We talked about that. Delcy Rodriguez made a deal with the devil, and she is now a puppet for the puppet of the United States, who is a puppet for the table. Again, puppet regime. Trump also recently teased the possibility of making Venezuela the 51st United States state. The Trump administration was reportedly undertaking a regime change operation in Cuba, attempting to push out President Miguel Diaz-Canel as a requirement for negotiations between the U.S. and that island nation. U.S. officials are said to favor Raul Guillermo Rodriguez Castro. Oh, another Castro. The grandson of 94-year-old Raul Castro, the former Cuban president and brother to Fidel, the leader of Cuba from 1959 to 2008. Diaz-Canel referenced U.S. plans to seize the country late Tuesday and said that the U.S. would be met with impregnable resistance. I am holding Cuba, Trump said recently. We're going to do Iran before Cuba. Trump imposed an oil blockade on Cuba in January, plunging the country into a humanitarian crisis. The island's national electrical grid has already collapsed 3 times this month, with one blackout lasting more than 29 hours. Now, following up on what we just read about Colombia, recent official leaks about the potential U.S. indictment of President Gustavo Petro of Colombia on drug charges, the official reason for Maduro's kidnapping and the means reportedly used to keep his successor Rodriguez in line, suggests that the U.S. may employ that tactic as leverage or as an eventual pretext for military action. The U.S. attacks on the Colombia-Ecuador border come as America has recently established a permanent FBI presence in Ecuador. Did you guys know that we have an FBI office in Ecuador? Yep. Joining agents from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration and the Department of Homeland Security. So FBI is just joining their friends. Their office is probably going to sit right next to the DEA office that's in Ecuador and also the Department of Homeland Security in Ecuador, which is interesting because I thought the Department of Homeland Security would be, I don't know, in the homeland. But it's in Ecuador. What do you expect when the president of Ecuador is a CIA asset? Again, I understand that this stuff's not fun. And I understand there's a lot of people that listen that this is probably their first time hearing something that shows how truly evil the United States is. But welcome to reality. It only gets worse from here. If you have not released your grip from this world. Now, again, those who have been around know my story, know that I was, one of those patriot freedom fighter guys. I was always, Constitution this and stand up for that, and United States this and that. And I used to be one of those people. And then when I started to wake up and see what is really going on, I started to let go of the world. And I realized that when it comes to titles, the only title that I care about is I follow Jesus. I don't go by anything else. I used to be one of those. I was a Christian patriot. I was a constitutional Christian. I was all these things or whatever. Now I simply say I follow Jesus because I realize how absolutely corrupt this entire world is. I have let go from it. I understand that there's no fixing this. There's no coming back from this. There's no, you can't even apply a Band-Aid to this thing anymore. It is a train downhill, no brakes, and it's going from here. And I think, and I believe this, the reason why God is allowing the church, allowing his bride to see the things that they're seeing right now. I still can't believe that we're seeing some of the things that we are seeing. I thought we'd be gone by now, but I believe that the reason why we're allowed to see what we're doing and he's keeping us here till the very last second has to do with the fact that he wants his church, his followers to finally let go of all of this. And so you're seeing, and I'm seeing it, but you're seeing there's either some who follow Christ that are getting it and they are letting go, or you're starting to see a lot of them that they're gripping tighter to hold on to the narratives that are like a warm, fuzzy blanket for them while they're here. They're not letting go of the system. They're holding on tighter to it, believing the lies. So again, you have a choice. Are you going to be one of those people that's going to deny reality and continue to strengthen your grip upon this earth because you want to hold on to a political system or to a president or whatever else that you're thinking of? Or are you going to be one of those people that's going to recognize the reality of it, see that God is giving you an opportunity to finally let go and just let go? As somebody who has let go, that literally, I just had a conversation with my chiropractor yesterday. That he found out that I was a Christian and whatnot, and he was asking me, he's like, you know, because he said, "How you doing?" I said, "Oh, just another day waiting for paradise." And he was like, "Waiting for paradise?" And I said, "Yeah, man, this is the worst it's going to get for me. I'm going home after this." He says, "Oh, you Christian?" I say, "Yeah, I believe in Jesus," and so on and so forth. And when I say I'm ready to go, I mean it. I could go right now. I could drop dead this very second in your office and I'd be A-okay. I am ready to go. I got nothing else to hang on to this world. I have plans for the future, but if those plans get interrupted by going home, what do I care? Because I've let go of the earth. I've let go of this world. There's nothing here that satisfies me anymore. Just him. I encourage you, if you're somebody that doesn't have that, do it. Let go. Let go. All right. Couple more things here. All right. Pentagon will remove media offices after judge reinstates New York Times press credentials. So this was something that we were following for a while. Earlier this year, late last year too, where there's a new policy going into the Pentagon press, because there's press offices in the Pentagon for media companies to have their people there, so they have easy access to the military information and whatnot. And Hegseth instituted a new policy. You guys remember this? Where you have to abide by the rule of you cannot solicit any information. All information that is written down must be approved by the Pentagon before it can be sent to the media office and everything like that. It was a way for them to control the media. And so a whole host of reporters and whatnot refused to sign the policy. And then a whole bunch of pro-Trump affiliated news organizations signed it to get in there for the first time. Well, a couple of the news organizations sued after that, saying that is against the First Amendment, which it absolutely is. Right to free press is part of the First Amendment. And they won. So what does the Pentagon do? Okay, we'll kick you out of the Pentagon then, because they lost. Says the U.S. Defense Department will remove media offices from the Pentagon after a federal judge sided with the New York Times in a lawsuit challenging limits on reporters' access to the building. A department official announced Monday. An area of the Pentagon known as the Correspondence Corridor that reporters have used for decades to cover the U.S. military will close immediately. Department spokesperson Sean Parnell said journalists will eventually be able to work from an annex outside the building, which is where most of them have been working from now anyways, which he said will be available when ready. He offered no detail about how long that will take. Pentagon Press Association said that the announcement is a clear violation of the letter in the spirit of last week's ruling. The Times sued the Pentagon and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth in December, claiming that the agency's new credentialing policy violated journalists' constitutional rights to free speech and the due process. Dozens of reporters had walked out of the building rather than agreed to the government-imposed restrictions on their work. U.S. District Judge Paul Friedman in Washington, D.C. last week sided with the newspaper. He ordered the Pentagon to reinstate the press credentials of 7 Times journalists and struck down some of the agency's restrictions on news reporting. Friedman said that the undisputed evidence shows that the policy is designed to weed out disfavored journalists and replace them with those who are on board and willing to serve the government, to be mouths for the United States propaganda. That's what they're doing. A clear instance of illegal viewpoint discrimination. Parnell said that the Defense Department disagrees with the ruling and is pursuing an appeal. Of course they do. He said security concerns prompted restrictions on press access, a claim that journalists have rejected. No, it has nothing to do with security concerns. It has to do, if it was about security concerns, leaked military operation, classified operation details wouldn't be shared on Telegram with Pete Hegseth. You guys remember that? Pete Hegseth put classified information in a Telegram chat, and somebody who wasn't supposed to be in the Telegram chat got access to it and leaked all that stuff. Yeah, if it had anything to do with that, they wouldn't be doing that. No, this has to do with controlling the media and making state media. And the judge said no. And so because the Pentagon got up in its fifis and threw a fit, they just decided to throw all of the reporters out of the Pentagon, which has not been done in decades. So if you guys don't remember, I thought this was a good opportunity to bring this back up so you guys know exactly who signed on to be a propaganda mouthpiece for the Pentagon. And these are ones to avoid. And I've warned about a lot of them, but just to make sure that you guys know, these are the ones who signed on to make sure to be a propaganda mouthpiece, a bullhorn for the United States. One American News, Epoch Times, The Federalist. What are some of the other ones that people like to use? Real America's Voice, Lindell TV, Gateway Pundit, Washington Reporter, Human Events, which is Jack Posobiec, Red State, National Post, Post Millennial, Just the News, Daily Signal, Timcast, TPUSA Frontlines, InfoWars, and Laura Loomer. So just keep that in mind, because I know several of those that I just listed off, people in the church claim that that's the real news. They're the ones that tell the truth. No, they're the ones that feed you all of the stuff that makes you feel comfortable, because they just say what you already believe. And so that's what you're looking for. There's a lot of people that they don't want to know the truth of what's going on. They just want their own opinions spoken through these groups. And so that's where a lot of them get. But just so you guys remember, those are the ones that many in the prophecy community in the churches listen to, because they think that's the real news. They tell the truth. Why do they tell the truth? Because they agree with everything that I already believe regarding Trump and the United States and all that stuff. That's why. Just keep that in mind. Anyways, because we know, this is the self-proclaimed administration of transparency. They're doing everything that they can to be as transparent as possible, right? Trump administration asked Supreme Court to halt Doge inquiry. The Trump administration asked the U.S. Supreme Court to block a government watchdog group from questioning a senior official and obtaining internal records about the Department of Government Efficiency project led once by Elon Musk. So a group wants to find out information about what Doge was doing, and the Trump administration, who claims to be the most transparent administration in U.S. history, is trying to hide it and block them from being able to see what Doge actually did. The March 18th request by the Justice Department is part of a long-running legal fight with Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, which is seeking to uncover information about Doge's efforts last year to drastically cut federal spending and fire thousands of government workers. The justices intervened in the same case last year in favor of the administration, halting Cruz's fact-finding push, but the case was sent back to the federal appeals court, which allowed Cruz's request for documents and testimony to proceed after the liberal-leaning organization narrowed some of its lines of inquiry. Cruz demanding government records about Doge under the Federal Freedom of Information Act. The Trump administration argues that Doge is not an agency covered by the transparency law. So Doge is able to go in and completely fire a whole bunch of government workers have access to classified national security data, install private corporation AI chatbots, take everybody's sensitive data on flash drives and hard drives, and make giant government changing policy directional changes. But yet they can do all that, but they're not an agency that can be looked at through the transparency law. That's what the Trump administration wants you to believe. Before reaching that core question, a judge in Washington gave crew permission to gather evidence about how Doge is operated, including making its administrator, Amy Gleason, available to testify under oath at a deposition. The administration has been fighting that step for months. Being very transparent, aren't they? Speaking of which, how about this? The Treasury just declared the U.S. insolvent. The media missed it. Yeah. The U.S. Treasury actually came out and publicly said that the United States is insolvent, which means their debts are higher than the assets that they own. And the media never reported on it. And what is the U.S. government doing right now? Spending more than they ever have before. Yeah, we're being told that the government is spending less and is cutting the deficit and all that stuff, but yet the United States government, as of right now, is actually spending more than ever before. The U.S. government is insolvent. It's not hyperbole. It's the conclusion drawn directly from the Treasury Department's own consolidated financial statements for the fiscal year of 2025, released last week to a near total media silence. The numbers, $6.06 trillion in total assets against $47.78 trillion in total liabilities as of September 30th, 2025. That's not a few dollars in debt. That's ridiculous. Importantly, the $47.78 trillion as reported liabilities does not include the unfunded obligations, pay attention to this, of social insurance programs like Social Security and Medicare. Those are disclosed separately in an off-balance sheet statement of social insurance, which is SOSI. What that means, we know the United States is in debt. We know all that. What that means is for those who think that their Social Security is going to be there a few years from now, for those who think that Medicare is going to be there a few years from now, is not. That's what that means. As it is, if you go back a couple years ago, there's a report that Social Security was going to basically be fizzled out. It was either by 2028 or 2029, somewhere in there. And so this is actually pretty interesting that they're announcing this now, which is in line with what the Social Security office said a few years ago when it said we're not going to be able to last that much longer. So if you're banking on Social Security, this is a warning. This is a warning on it. The government's consolidated balance sheet position, excluding the SOSI, deteriorated by nearly $2.07 trillion between 2024 and 2025, reaching a staggering negative $41.72 trillion. Total liabilities are now nearly 8 times the value of reported assets. The largest drivers were $2 trillion increase in federal debt and interest payable, now $30.33 trillion, and a $438.8 billion increase in federal employee and veteran benefits payable, now $15.47 trillion. Crazy times. All right, taking a look at ICE here. The pressure is untenable. Trump's deployment of ICE agents to airports ramps up shutdown fight. Again, we talked about this. Interesting timing that the government has been shut down when it comes, partial shutdown has to do with the TSA agents. Meanwhile, ICE is increasing presence in the United States, now they're being deployed to the airports at the same time. Pretty interesting. as well as the energy situation where they're now telling people to travel less. It says ICE agents have been deployed to the airports across the country as partial government shutdown continues. Houston's George Bush Intercontinental Airport, William P. Hobby Airport, New York City's John F. Kennedy International Airport, New Jersey's Newark Liberty Airport, Chicago's O'Hare International Airport, Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport have all confirmed, along with agents have also been seen at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport, which is the world's busiest. Border czar Tom Homan told reporters Monday that ICE agents are present at 14 airports right now, and there will be more. Is this just an opportunity for them to start spreading out Trump's Gestapo across the United States right now? Interesting. Something to think about. Says Trump on Sunday evening also threw a wrench in the congressional negotiations over the shutdown, stating on Truth Social that he may not make a deal unless Democrats back his Save America Act. But as negotiations continue, TSA agents have gone without pay, leading some to call out of work and triggering hours-long wait time at some airports. I don't know how anybody's actually even making their flights on time, because people are showing up 5, 6, 7 hours early to try and make it through TSA, and they're still halfway through the line, and they're saying that, yeah, my flight leaves in 15 minutes. I don't know how anybody's even making it through there. All right, and we're going to end with a couple of tech updates, including this one. Cyber attack on vehicle breathalyzer system leaves drivers stranded across the United States. Cyber attack on Intoxilock servers leave 150,000 court-ordered users unable to start vehicles across 46 states since March 14th. Over 150,000 people can't start their cars in 46 states. So this has nothing to do with breathalyzer systems, has nothing to do with that. The point I want to make in regards to this is the United States is pushing through the car kill switch. You guys remember that? They're pushing that through where all cars after a certain period are going to have a kill switch that can be triggered remotely to turn it off. We already know that they have something similar, like, the OnStar system and stuff like that. A lot of Tesla cars have these things already in them and everything like that. But look what happens when somebody through a digital sphere has the ability to restrict your right to travel in your own car. So a cyber attack has locked people out of their cars with breathalyzer systems, which means somebody else has the ability to control somebody's own personal property and make it so you can't freely travel. And so what they're doing now with all these new systems of car kill switches is it's the same thing. You will own nothing and you will be happy. It's one of those things where it's the illusion of owning something. I've brought this up when it comes to home ownership. If you own a home and mortgage is paid off, everything like that, you're not making any payments on it. If you stop paying property tax, they'll take your home. Do you actually own it? You don't. You don't actually own your home. Even if it's your property, even if it's your house that's paid off, you don't own it. It's the same thing with car registration. If you bought a car and you pay it off, even though you have the right to freely travel on public space with your own property, if you don't pay a registration, a license, you don't actually own that thing. You can't use it. This is something that people need to, again, if you're still holding on to the world, this should be a wake-up call. All the things that you think you own, you don't. It's already been there. They're just increasing it. They're just making it more invasive than it's already been. So just keep that in mind. It says court-mandated breathalyzers exist to keep dangerous drivers off the road, but a cyber attack has turned these safety devices into digital ankle bracelets. Since March 14th, thousands of drivers across 46 states have found themselves trapped, not by law enforcement, but by failed servers that won't let their cars start. Again, they're making it as obvious as possible if you're willing to see it. And then if we take a look at this, This just came out, of course, under the guise or under the fog of the Iran war situation. National Policy Framework, Artificial Intelligence. So this is a 4-page national policy framework where they're trying to nationalize AI policy, taking freedom away from states and create a centralized AI policy in the United States. So just a couple points that I want to point out on this. Why did it do that? Ugh. Hold on one second. There we go. All right. I cannot make it any bigger because this thing is finicky. But there's just a couple things I want to point out on this. So they're trying to nationalize AI across the United States, basically allow the United States government to own what AI can be used for, how it can be used, and block any restrictions on AI that they don't approve. And so just a couple points I want to point out on this. You can find this on the White House website. It says Congress should establish commercially reasonable privacy protective age assurance requirements such as parental attestation for AI platforms and services likely to be accessed by minors. Now, what that means is they're basically saying that all AI systems in the United States must verify with an ID your age before you can use it. Now, again, we're from the position here on this channel. We don't like AI. We don't use AI. We believe AI is satanic and demonic. There's some people that still don't believe that. That's fine. But from our perspective here on this channel, my perspective, I think it's demonic. I don't use it. But that doesn't mean that they're not going to use AI as a gateway for them to implement digital identification, internet identification, and restrict the ability to use these things unless you hand over your ID to use it. And so they have this listed in their national policy framework for AI that they're wanting to implement countrywide, and any rejection by states, sovereign states, will be overruled by federal government. Now, the big ones are down here because it basically tells you, of course, they bury them in the back, but this is basically what they're saying. Congress should preempt state AI laws. So Congress should supersede state AI laws that impose undue burdens on to ensure a minimally burdensome national standard consistent with these recommendations, not 50 discordant ones. So what they're saying is the United States government is going to implement its own national policy regarding AI laws. And sovereign states cannot restrict or implement any other laws that deter away from the national AI law policy. This is something that they attempted before. They tried to sneak this into the One Big Beautiful Bill. We talked about that way back when. They were attempting to sneak this very same thing in there, and it got taken out because of it caught wind. People saw it in the bill, and it became national news at that point. And so they took it out. They're now attempting to put it in this thing where they're saying that sovereign states cannot restrict federal AI law and cannot impose anything that would counter that, basically taking away sovereign state rights. On top of that, it says preemption must ensure that state laws do not govern areas better suited to the federal government or act contrary to the United States national strategy to achieve global AI dominance. States should not be permitted States should not be permitted to regulate AI development because it is an inherently interstate phenomenon with key foreign policy and national security implications. So what they're attempting to do is completely restrict the ability of states to block AI in any way, shape, or form, because the United States is basically taking control of AI in this country. That should be freaky. Doesn't stop there. We have this. Trump contracting clause would override AI safeguards. Amid their Anthropic fight, remember that whole Anthropic situation? Trump officials are advancing a new provision that would empower them to force AI companies to scrap safety and privacy protocols. I'm going to say that again. Trump officials are advancing a new provision that would empower them to force AI companies. So this is the federal government forcing private companies to scrap safety and privacy protocols. The Trump administration is quietly advancing a sweeping new contracting clause that would empower federal officials to force AI companies to scrap safety protocols, eliminate privacy protections, and follow other Trump directives as a condition of doing business with the government. The new proposal comes just as the Trump administration faces off in court against a major AI company, a military contractor, Anthropic, which has objected to government directives mandating the use of algorithms for mass surveillance and fully autonomous weapons. The proposed government-wide change to procurement policy would require all AI vendors to make their technology available to federal agencies for any lawful government purpose. Well, as we know, this administration in particular doesn't give a rip about the law and what is legal and not legal, so that doesn't matter to them. Even those that the companies object to or that their systems are engineered to prevent. This would enshrine the same demand that the Pentagon is contesting in court in its ongoing battle against Anthropic. Keep in mind, companies like OpenAI, who's involved with ChatGPT, xAI, which is Elon Musk's company, Anduril, Palantir, and there's another one, I can't remember what it is, have all signed contracts with the Pentagon, which means they're A-okay with the United States government using their AI systems for whatever they want to. Under the new guidance, this key portion of the Anthropic contract under dispute would become a required standard clause for all government contracts and solicitations for any AI system. The language is so broad that even a former Trump official who wrote the administration's policy proposal for artificial intelligence, known as the AI Action Plan, called the provision legally unworkable in a public comment. So the Trump official who wrote the AI Action Plan for the Trump administration said that this is not legally workable, but they're moving forward with it anyways. If that's not enough, Blackburn's Trump America AI Act repeals Section 230, expands AI liability, and mandates age verification. This government is hitting the AI and digital identification situation in three ways at the exact same time under the cover of the Iran war. Nobody's paying attention to this. So Senator Marsha Blackburn has introduced a 291-page legislative discussion draft that would reshape how information is allowed to exist online. And this is the actual bill, all 291 pages. I have not read all 291 pages. I've read a few of them to try and collect as much as I could, but there's no way that I'm reading all that. I just don't have time. And my brain would probably shut down. It says the Trump America AI Act, officially titled the Republic Unifying Meritocratic Performance Advancing Machine Intelligence by Eliminating Regulatory Interstate Chaos Across American Industry Act. Jeez, man.
You are terrible.
Well, that act bundles together Section 230 repeal, expanded AI liability, age verification mandates, and a stack of additional bills that have been circulating separately for years. All of it is wrapped in a national AI framework that claims it is tied to President Trump's December executive order. But I'm being told by all the pastors that Trump is against the globalists. Alex Newman tells me that, so obviously whatever he says must be true. I must deny reality. What the actual 291 pages describe is a system that centralizes regulatory authority, removes the legal protections platforms currently rely on, and hands new enforcement tools to federal agencies, state attorneys, and private litigants simultaneously. The legal foundation of the modern internet is Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Okay, this is important. So I know it's been a long show, but come on back because this is very important for literally everybody watching right now. The legal foundation of the modern internet is Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, and this bill is trying to eliminate it. So what is that? It shields platforms from being sued for the content that users post. Without Section 230, platforms could become legally responsible for what their users post, which could mean anything controversial, contested, or legally ambiguous becomes a liability they'll quietly remove rather than defend. So for those in the United Kingdom, you know exactly what this is because it's the same bill that they introduced to social media platforms where social media platforms are liable for whatever content their users post on there, which means the social media platform must surveil and remove anything that is quote unquote deemed controversial by the government. What this bill is attempting to do is repeal the safeguard that we have here in the United States. And if they do that, whatever is happening in the United Kingdom when it comes to their internet online bills is now here in the United States. That means, literally, if you go on Facebook and you push something that, the United States military blew up the school with all the Iranian schoolgirls in it. And if you post that on Facebook, this protects you from being able to put it on there. If this was gone and you posted that on Facebook, Facebook would see that and remove it because they would be liable by the U.S. government because the U.S. government doesn't want that information out there. It would also apply to this show on YouTube. Most of what we talk about is stuff that the U.S. government doesn't like. YouTube would be required to remove my content from their website because they are liable for the things that I am saying. You see what this is? That's what they're trying to push through in the United States. Enforcement doesn't sit only with federal regulators. State attorneys general and private actors both get standing to sue. The downstream effect on publishing is direct. Once liability protections go, platforms can no longer host content neutrally. Reporting on contentious subjects doesn't need to be factually wrong or become a liability problem. It just needs to be frameable as harmful. The predictable result, platforms tighten policies, reduce reach, or quietly stop hosting the material that exposes them most. Blackburn frames the bill as clearing up a patchwork of state laws, again taking away sovereign state laws, through a single national standard. The agency is empowered to define and enforce that standard, the FTC, DOJ, NIST, and the Department of Energy. Rather than competing state-level experiments, this creates a centralized governance structure where a handful of federal bodies set the rules for AI development across the entire country. And this got snuck in exactly when the AI policy framework came in, all under the cover of the Iran war. A little bit more information on this. It's called the Trump AI Act, and it says it was introduced by Senator Marsha Blackburn out of Tennessee. On the surface, the bill's goals sound like everything Americans have been asking for: protect children from harmful AI, stop big tech censorship, defend creators, and promote American innovation. But here's the first thing you need to understand about the bill. It is not one bill. It is 17 bills crammed into 291 pages. 17 bills stitched together into one, and is presented as a single piece of legislation. It bundles child safety provisions, Section 230 repeal, copyright law, agency AI governance, anti-bias audits, content watermarking, and a national AI research infrastructure, all under one roof. Underneath the child safety framing, the bill builds an architecture for a national digital ID system, and the mechanism is used to get there is one that will be very difficult to argue against: protecting your kids. I have been warning about that for years. For years, I said that they're going to introduce internet IDs and digital IDs under the guise of protecting the kids, and it's going to be introduced by people on the right. Josh Hawley has been one of the big ones. The people out of Missouri has been one of the big ones. The people in Utah have been one of the big ones. Marsha Blackburn is a Republican out of Tennessee because they're pulling on the heartstrings about the kids. These are the same people who either protect or do things to kid thing. Yeah. And they're the ones telling you, we're going to protect your kids, but we need to introduce digital and internet IDs to do so. And everybody's eating it up, going, that's what I voted for. Trump is saving us from the globalists. How is he saving you from the globalists? By introducing the exact same thing the globalists have been attempting to do so. That's how he's saving us from the globalists. Title 5, the GUARD Act requires the following. Every user of an AI chatbot must create an account before accessing it. Every account must age verify using a reasonable age verification measure. The bill defines that measure explicitly as a government-issued identification or an equivalent commercial method. Under this bill, you will be required to present government-issued ID to access an AI chatbot. Section 417 mandates a federal study on implementing age verification at the device or operating system level, meaning your phone or computer itself would be required to verify your identity before allowing access to certain content. The government is openly studying how to bake in a digital identity layer into consumer hardware. These two provisions together, ID at the account level today, ID at the device level tomorrow, which some states are already doing that, are not separate ideas. They are sequential steps in the same infrastructure product. Title I of the bill imposes a legal duty of care on AI developers, requiring them to prevent reasonably foreseeable harms to users. If a platform is legally liable for harms to users, they must be able to demonstrate in court that they were watching for those harms, flagging them, and intervening. That's surveillance and censorship. Duty of care is not passive standard. It is an active surveillance obligation dressed up in the language of responsibility. The bill imposes duty of care on platforms. Platforms must monitor user interactions to demonstrate compliance. Monitoring requires persistence. Identity-linked accounts, which the bill also requires. Identity-linked accounts require age verification, which the bill also requires. Age verification requires government ID, which the bill also requires. Now, keep in mind, a lot of this stuff has to do with using AI chatbots. Now, it's fascinating because I've brought this up before, and I'm going to go ahead and say it again. I don't care who gets their tighty-whities in a bunch because of it. You have people out there who are deemed heroes when it comes to the information because they may be saying some of the stuff that's actually true. Specifically, I'm talking about somebody like Patrick Wood, who has spent 6, 7, 8 years publicly rallying against AI. And then all of a sudden, one day he decides to go ahead and promote it and saying, you must use AI, otherwise you're going to fall behind. And he uses AI in his research. He uses AI to write articles for his website. And so somebody who is deemed anti-technocracy is literally telling and endorsing that technocracy system of AI. Now, with this, that AI is going to require you to age verify and put forth a digital ID to use it. Is he going to stand up against that? Or is he going to go ahead and comply with it in order to use his precious AI chatbots, which he now all of a sudden is in favor of? You see what I mean? What are you standing for? What is the limit? How far are you willing to go? Just throwing it out there. Now, who gets your identity data? Section 503 allows covered entities to contract with third-party age verification providers to carry out identity verification. These are often data broker companies whose entire business model is the collection, aggregation, and monetization of personal data. Section 6, or Title 6, Section 602, requires every covered AI developer to hand over to the Department of Energy on request the following. And this is where the United States government basically takes over all United States AI infrastructure. They must hand over the underlying source code of their AI system, all data used to train the system, model weights and adjustable parameters, the interface engine and implementation details, detailed information about training methodology and architecture. The federal government can demand the complete technical blueprint of any major AI system without a warrant, without individualized suspicion, as a routine condition of operating. Boy, that matches up with both the AI policy framework and the stipulation that they're implementing about all AI involved with the government must be able to be used in any way that the government says. Then on top of that, they want to make it so any AI company must hand over everything about their AI system to the government. Anybody seeing a major problem with this? Throughout this bill, in Title I, or Title 1, Title 4, Title 5, and 5, 6, 7, 8, Title 8, Congress hands the Federal Trade Commission sweeping authority to promulgate rules establishing minimum reasonable safeguards. The FTC will decide what counts as harm from an AI chatbot, what reasonable safeguards look like, what platforms must comply, and how to enforce violations. Section 230 repeal, back to the Section 230, is something conservatives have demanded for years as a way to hold big tech accountable for censorship. But full repeal removes both the Section 230's protections, including the one that shields platforms from liability for content posted by users. Without that shield, every platform hosting user-generated content becomes a litigation target, which means they're going to remove anything that they could get sued for. Then it says the anti-bias and anti-DEI language in Title 8 and Title 16 sounds like a meaningful commitment to ideological neutrality in AI, but bias audits are only as neutral as the people conducting them. Anti-DEI procurement rules are only as meaningful as the administration enforcing them, which grants them the ability to declare harm or DEI to anything that they define it as. And then it says the federal government has made it clear it wants to unify AI framework rather than 50 different state laws. That is why the Trump administration has been pushing back on state-level bills. A centralized system is easier to control, enforce, and integrate into existing federal agencies than a patchwork of state rules, and that's exactly what that 4-page AI policy, national policy framework is designed to do. What we are witnessing right now, with all that going on, am I here to freak you out? Am I here to say, go fight this or anything like that? No. My point with all of that is right now, what we are witnessing is we are witnessing a global energy reset, which under the cover of, I believe we are witnessing the advancement of biblical supply lines shifting back to the Middle East, which we covered that on Saturday. And under the cover of all of that, I think we are witnessing the implementation of illegal land grabs currently happening in Latin America. And under the cover of all that, we are witnessing an entire framework, digital framework, to be established nationally that's taking away the sovereign rights of states, implementing digital and internet ID, implementing a national AI framework where the government is going to not only control how AI is used without any restrictions, but also take any blueprint, source code of all AI systems and be able to steal it warrantless without any opposition and introduce it and implement it in any way that it sees fit. And all of this is happening all at the exact same time right now as we sit here talking about this. Okay. I'm officially scared. What does all that mean? Well, first of all, don't be scared. Don't be scared. I don't know about you guys. I'm calm. I'm at peace. When I see this stuff, I'm at peace, man. I'm just chilling. Why? Because I know all of this must come to pass for God's prophecy to be fulfilled in the future, which that future is already past for God, because the reason why we know it's going to happen is because it's already happened for him. So prophecy is not a guessing game in the future. It's not a prediction. It's not something that you saw, that God saw a vision of the future and now he's telling the writers of scripture to write this stuff down. No, this is something where God has already seen what has happened. It's already happened for him. And he has written it down in his word as a guaranteed will happen, not a possible, or can we stall this, or can we hold this off? Can we, restrict this in some type of way? Or is Satan going to pull a fast one and do something that may throw everything off course? Or is something going to happen that's going to alter something? Nope. Because the future that we read in Scripture is history for the Lord. And if you're somebody who sees that, believes that, and abide by that, you should be at peace and calm as all of this stuff happens. For those who have let go of the world, what do we have to fear? Because written in that scripture, amongst all the prophecy, many of which have been fulfilled, and many are future coming, there's a promise in there that the Lord is going to take us out before his day begins. And that should also bring you peace, because in the same verses that explain that, we are told to encourage one another with that, so we may edify each other. Again, not scare us to the point of crapping our khakis, but edify and encourage. Because how can we do our job properly of warning of what's coming and sharing the gospel if we're too busy shaking at the knees in fear because we don't know what the future holds for us? No. We're promised that we'll be taken out before all that stuff starts to happen, which means we don't have fear and we have the full capacity to do what we're told to do in these times, which is to share the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is as simple as ABC. A is you admit that you're a sinner. the act of repentance, metanoia, changing of mind, turning from self to Christ. It's through metanoia, it's through repentance that allows true belief in Jesus Christ. Because how can we believe in Jesus Christ as our Savior if we don't know why we need Jesus Christ as our Savior? And so it's through that repentance that allows true believers believe. We believe Jesus Christ is the one and only begotten Son of God, that he came down 100% man, 100% God, the God-man, the one and only, which means he was the perfect, clean, spotless lamb, the perfect sacrifice for the sins of the world. The only one, past, present, and future. He's the only one that qualifies. And he took our place upon that cross. My place upon that cross, where he was crucified and he died. But because there's power in the blood of Jesus Christ that was spilled, he defeated death and rose again on the third day, just as he promised and prophesied. He rose again on the third day, for all who believe in him shall not perish, but live forever in his presence and in his glory. Again, if you place your faith in Christ, we have the promise of being in his presence forever. And if you think about it, the opposite of being in the presence of God is hell. He did the work. The finished work. Because when we place our faith in Christ, we place our faith in Jesus Christ. We place our faith in his death, burial, and resurrection. We place our faith in that power-filled, spilled blood. And we place our faith in the completed, tetelestai, finished work upon that cross, where it's his glory, his gift, his salvation, something that we cannot earn, transact, or buy. Something that he freely gives to all those who place their faith in him. And see, as we call upon the Lord, when we receive salvation, we are indwelt with the Holy Spirit, and we are given an incredible supernatural gift of prayer that allows us to go to the throne room of God at any moment of any day. And you don't have to worry about talking his ear off, because he wants to hear from us. And we say, Lord God, thank you. Thank you for allowing us to be in these times, as dark and as just dirty and scrungy as they are. We understand that these are the last days that you have told us about. And what should we expect? But we know that you are here with us. We know that you are in full control, all-knowing of what is to come. And that we just need to be confident in you, not in ourselves, but in you, as we go about and do the things that you have commanded us to do, to be watchmen, and to do the Great Commission. Lord, give us endurance to run each day to the end of that race. And give us the boldness to speak the name of Jesus Christ in the dark and dangerous places of this world, knowing that we are at full calm and peace, that whatever happens here will be the worst, because we know what's on the other side waiting for us. And we say, Lord Jesus, please come soon, Maranatha. In your holy name we pray. Amen. Amen. All right. I thought we were going to get done earlier tonight, but did not happen. So I apologize about that. Oh, alrighty then. We got a couple of questions here. We'll try and knock some of these out. Lori S. question, heard there's an explosion at a Texas oil refinery. Do you know what could have possibly happened? We talked about that. So this question probably came in before we got to it, Lori. So I think I answered it. We don't really know what happened to it. We just know that there was an explosion and it shut down. We don't know what caused it. We don't know how long it's going to be shut down. We do know that nobody was killed from the reports, which is good. But beyond that, I've shared with you all the information that I have about it. So I'm sorry I don't have anything else for you. Edward, what's your take on the missing Air Force general? I don't know, dude. That thing is weird. It's weird because there's a couple other people like scientist dudes that also disappeared about the same time that he did, and they're just gone. I don't know. I don't know what to make about that, man. I don't know if they went into hiding. I don't know if they got disappeared. I don't know. It is weird though. That's a mystery. I got nothing on it. Sorry, man. Let's see here. Julie B question, do you think T will reenact the draft now? As I said before, I've covered as much as we know on it. Carolyn Levitt said that it is not off the table. We know that the NDAA that was signed last year implemented the automatic draft registration, which begins in December, and we know that they just raised the recruitment age from 35 to 42. Those are all signs that they will implement it in the future. When, if, how, I don't know. But it sure looks like things are moving in the direction of massive scaling, conscription scaling for the military. Deboni Ray, I had read on Telegram that European countries are not allowing vessels to unload their oil and aren't allowed to talk about it. Have you seen anything about this energy lockdowns coming? I've seen some reports that there are certain ports that are blocking the unloading of oil. The reason given has to do with they don't have storage capacity for it. I don't know if that's true or not, but I have heard some rumblings that there are some ports that are rejecting the supply. I don't know. I gotta wait and see if there's more information that comes out. I've heard similar. I don't necessarily buy the reason for it, but yeah. E-Rock question, has anyone heard that Iran claimed responsibility for the Port Arthur oil rig disaster? No, I haven't seen anything that confirms that. I've seen some rumors. There's a whole lot of rumors out there, nothing that actually verifies it. The Hylers question, have you come to learn the reason U.S. started the war? The reason U.S. started the war with Iran? Everything that I can give you, I've been giving you the past few days. We don't know the direct reason. There's many outcomes of it. I've given a whole bunch of different outcomes that are coming from it. Again, I think this is a situation where like the Kuf thing and all that stuff, it's not one reason, it's not two reasons, it's not three reasons. I think there's a whole host of reasons to it, and I'm giving you everything that I got. So, yeah, I'm not withholding anything from you guys. So, and if I can verify it, if I know for sure, or if it's something that I think is worth keeping an eye on, I'm letting you guys know. I don't do the rumor stuff. I don't try and make up speculation or anything like that. I'm giving you everything that I got. So that's all I can do. So I'm not holding anything back. Just letting you guys know. All right, guys, that is it. Thank you guys for joining me today. Again, sorry for going long. Wasn't planning on it, but it's just the times that we're in. Usual spiel. If you guys can, like, share, subscribe, get this out to as many people as you can. It's not about views, not about butts and seats, but it is about getting the warning out to people and getting people to Jesus. So if you guys can give me a solid like, share, subscribe, I would certainly appreciate it. Also follow along on Rumble and Telegram. Those are my backup channels. If I get booted off YouTube, we'll be back up live streaming over on Rumble. Telegram, post updates, announcements, and other little things here and there that I can't necessarily put in video format that I throw up on there. So please follow there if you have those available. If not, no worries. Just make sure you guys bookmark the WretchedWatchmen.com website. That's your one-stop shop to stay up to date on everything happening with this channel and what we do. You find the latest podcasts and live streams, announcement page, and the free book to download and all that type of jazz. So bookmark the page so you're always aware. And then last but not least, if you guys would like to support this channel and what I got going on, I got donation links down below. CashApp, Venmo, and GiveSendGo. This channel's not monetized. I don't make anything from ads, views, or anything like that. It runs solely off of your guys' generous donations. So again, the reason why we're able to do this and we're able to do it for free to get it out to everybody and not do all the stuff that I don't think that we should be doing with paywalls and subscriptions and memberships and stuff like that is because you guys support this. And we're able to get the information out and share the gospel. And I thank you guys for all of that. So thank you. All right, guys, that is it. Thank you for joining me. You guys have a great rest of your week. And continue to go out there, be watchmen. Don't have fear. Don't panic. Don't be a doom slinger either. And just make sure that you're doing what the Lord has commanded us to do. And if the Lord does not come back by Saturday, same time, same place, I'll meet you guys right back here. Peace out. Maranatha.
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.